Chapter 109. Mr. Wei understands this. He doesn't want to ruin the rest of his daughter's life, but he also doesn't want them to live the rest of their lives in solitary confinement, so he has to find another way out. He thinks highly of your talent and admires you. He might even want to betroth his daughter to you. Now that this has happened, there's no way he'll let you go. I said you're his future brother-in-law. What's wrong with that? Qiguan Rang was silent for a while. Or rather, he was speechless. The young man named Lu Shi's analysis was correct, but he still had a few doubts. Jiang Pingji moved closer and said mysteriously, "It's the First Lady, right?" Qiguan Rang glanced at her. He had one more doubt. He walked away quickly, not wanting to see the gossipy expression on Jiang Pingji's face. He wanted some peace and quiet. Lovelorn front Lianmeng. Why does he feel sorry for Qiguan Rang? The streamer exposed his secrets the moment they met. I guess he's feeling a little uneasy. I don't care if Dilly doesn't stop or if he's glad. I'm glad I don't live in an environment where there's no streamer. Even though it was fun to watch the live stream and they could even complain about it on the bullet screen, watching the streamer bully others or tear apart her own viewers, it was all from the perspective of a bystander. It was just a show to kill time. If there was such a person in real life, it would be horrifying to see through one's secrets the moment they met. A secret is a secret because only a few people know about it. However, Jiang Pingji's actions broke this rule. Naturally, it would cause others to be afraid and ostracize her. She doesn't play by the rules. Secrets have nowhere to hide from her. She's a monster. Love 100%. I checked the surnames on Baidu. If it's a surname, it should be Qiguan, right? Tong Qi 2 times. 100 Ghosts Night Walk. Valley Face 3 Evil. I'm just an ordinary person. I'm happy watching, so I don't think too much. Tudu Feiqiu, same. As long as you're happy. We're just watching the live stream. Why think so much? Streamer Jing Xianxia. We're watching the live stream from the streamer's perspective. The viewing experience should be from the streamer's perspective and role. If it was a stupid host who got bullied and stepped on everywhere, who would be able to watch it? Anyway, I'm feeling all sorts of good now. Streamer's side of me. 23333. After watching the live broadcast, I feel like my IQ has increased by several %. Streamer's back on me. Who's better at topping up IQ? Palace Intrigue livestream helps you. Jiang Pingji was speechless. No matter what, she couldn't face these demonic audiences and their IDs. Although Feng Jin did not hear what the two of them said, he could not help but remember how Jiang Pingji had threatened him when he saw Qiguan Rang's reaction. Suddenly, he felt sympathy for her and complained to her, "You scared him. You're scared just like that? What shall we do then?" She said significantly. "Shall we have to be alarmed every day?" Lao Siji Lianming, who's so surprised? Jiang Pingji was speechless. He had a bad premonition. Even though Wei Yuan was extremely unhappy, he still followed Jiang Pingji's instructions and asked the womenfolk to come out and look at them through the thin screen. She frowned and shook her head. Wei Yuan's face darkened and he ordered the maidservants to bring them back. Next were the female servants. The female servants were not as refined as the female servants, and it was fine for them to be stared at by an outsider once or twice. Therefore, they were simply allowed to gather in a relatively wide corridor. The surrounding servants each held a torch, brightly illuminating the courtyard. Feng Jin saw that she was serious and did not dare to interrupt her thoughts. Qiguan Rang looked at Jiang Pingji seriously, as if he was trying to read some useful information from her face. However, the results surprised him. He was a 12-year-old boy, the age when his emotions should be the most exposed. Even if he had been educated by an aristocratic family, his age and experience made it impossible for him to be as impenetrable as an old fox. People would always be able to find a loophole. But the boy's situation made him tremble with fear, and he was secretly very excited. The more he could not find out, the more it meant that the boy was full of secrets. In Qiguan Rang's opinion, there were two extraordinary people in Dongqing in recent years. One was Master Yuanjing of Langjia, who single-handedly took back the 3 cities by the border. The other was Lu Shi of Hejian, who had worked hard for many years to bring Hu County back to life. He had achieved a feat that many capable officials of the previous Xia dynasty could not achieve. Lu Shi was Lu Shi's son. He had the demeanor of his father, but he was also a hidden person. Lanting, what did you find out? It was rare for Qiguan Rang to put on a stiff smile. The corners of his lips were raised unnaturally. Perhaps he was used to wearing a cold expression all year round. The emotion of smiling was too foreign to him. Therefore when he smiled it was more of a fake smile. It was strange and treacherous. Of course I found out. Otherwise I wouldn't be able to answer to the master today, would I? After she finished speaking, Jiang Pingji got up and walked to the corridor. She walked straight into the crowd of servants, her eyes fixed on one target. It was a woman who looked to be in her early 30s. Her skin was brown, and there were 3 wrinkles between her eyebrows. There were obvious wrinkles at the corners of her eyes. She looked a few years older than her actual age. Her shoulders were slightly bowed and she looked extremely honest. Her fingertips that were exposed outside her sleeves were red and purple. Before she was called there, she was diligently washing clothes with well water. At first glance she was just an ordinary servant. She had the dullness and diligence of an honest person. There was nothing special about her. If there was anything wrong with her, it would be that her appearance was average, but her facial features were kind. She gave people a feeling that she was easy to get along with. However, some people were born with a strong affinity. That could not be used as evidence that there was something wrong with her. Qiguan Rang quickly glanced at the target Jiang Pingji was staring at. He was slightly suspicious. Why did she look for a servant? Could it be? Qiguan Rang's eyes turned quickly. His eyes were wide open because of the answer that flashed in his mind. So that was the truth. Qiguan Rang's eyes flashed. He opened his mouth and said, "Catch that woman." Jiang Pingji walked toward her. The servant kept her head down as if she was the most ordinary servant. There was no flaw in her expression. However, her nerves were secretly on edge. Until Jiang Pingji was in front of her, her nerves were already at their most sensitive. At that moment, Qiguan Rang's voice exploded in her ears. He was completely flustered. He knew that his identity was exposed and he did not mean to trick him. "You still want to escape?" The person panicked. He quickly grabbed a servant beside him and pushed him toward Jiang Pingji. The crowd was in an uproar. The order was instantly chaotic. Chapter 110. Everything happened in the blink of an eye. Before the crowd could recover from the shock, they were plunged into another wave of fear. Someone's dead. No one knew who shouted, but the crowd was as quiet as chickens. They silently retreated, forming a large circle. "What are you shouting for? She's not dead yet." Jiang Pingji scolded. The crowd could not help but move to the sides to make a path for her. The maid who was pushed had just woken up from the scare. She was distracted just now and suddenly felt a huge force pushing her in another direction. For a moment she was so scared that her heart almost jumped out of her throat. Then she fell steadily into a thin but strong embrace. She raised her head shyly and stole a glance at Jiang Pingji's appearance. From this angle she looked as delicate and pretty as a lady. She thought blithely. Then, as if she had touched a fire, she quickly left Jiang Pingji. "Thank you for saving me, Lang Jun." Her voice was as soft as a mosquito's. She did not dare to raise her voice. "It's good that you're fine. You and the rest of the servants should go and rest. It's best if you forget what happened tonight." Jiang Pingji stared coldly at the servant, who was lying on the ground, her hands covering her bleeding neck. Her voice was cold as ice. The maid did not care. She timidly glanced at Mr. Wei Yuan. After getting his approval, she followed Jiang Pingji's orders. After all, they were not servants of the Lus. If they listened to Jiang Pingji's orders without hesitation, Wei Yuan would probably feel uncomfortable. "This is clearly a woman." Wei Yuan only left his trusted butler behind. The rest of the servants were dismissed. Jiang Pingji saw the sandalwood fan that she had thrown and cut the servant's neck. She bent down to pick it up and wiped the blood off with a handkerchief. How could it be a woman? "If you don't believe me, why don't you take off all your clothes and check?" Wei Yuan nodded and signaled for the butler to help. Jiang Pingji looked down and stood aside. She was like a spectator in the livestream room. However, the viewers in the livestream room were not calm. They saw the butler roll up his sleeves and touch the servant's crotch. He seemed to pinch it. His face scrunched up like a chrysanthemum flower, and then a look of horror appeared on his face. The scene was too intense. Everything happened too suddenly. They were so shocked that they forgot to comment. Hongjun Laozu's chrysanthemum, */w***. Oh, my eyes are going blind. First, the host had stepped on the other party's balls in D*ck. Then an elderly man had touched a woman, who looked like a middle-aged woman. Today's live broadcast was too dirty. Streamer Zheng Xiaoshangguo. I don't care about anything else. I just want to know how it feels. Although the livestream was very dirty, the old driver in the livestream room seemed to be even dirtier. Things like moral integrity were lost after a while. The system, which had not said anything for a while, was bad. The system translator. Lu editor, ****. The viewers in the livestream room are so dirty. Can I control their mouths and their hands? As a system, it's your dereliction of duty if you don't censor or censor certain words. What does that have to do with me? Jiang Pingji pushed the blame away. The system, she sounded reasonable. It could not think of a reason to refute her. While they were bickering, the old butler stood up and walked to Wei Yuan's side. He nodded solemnly. It's really a man. Wei Yuan almost fainted from anger when he heard the answer. He did not have any impression of the servants in the backyard, but he knew that those who did laundry had the right to enter the inner and outer courtyards. In other words, the culprit who bullied his concubine, made him a cuckold and ruined his daughter's reputation was the wailing bastard in front of him. He was still angry when he remembered that he had accidentally found a male object when he was resting in his concubine's room. What made him feel even more humiliated was that the scandal had already reached the ears of someone who should not have known. Qiguan Rang was the son-in-law that he had his eyes on. He came from a poor family and had a rough life. He was also a widower who had lost his wife. Although his eldest daughter was a bit of a loss, it was not shameful for her to be with him. He had observed Qiguan Rang for a long time and felt that he could be trusted. Since Qiguan Rang was his future son-in-law, even if it was shameful, it was still his family. For the sake of his poor daughter, he was willing to let go of his pride. What harm was there in enduring it? His student Lu Shi was also involved. He seemed to be in the know. Otherwise, how could he explain the kid's actions that night? Was he going to make Lu Shi his son-in-law as well? What was more depressing was that if the kid had not climbed over the wall in the middle of the night, the fake woman in front of them would have escaped and they would not have been able to find the culprit. Therefore he couldn't blame himself, but if he didn't blame himself he would be holding back his anger and he would always feel embarrassed. His illustrious reputation had been completely thrown away tonight. As he thought about it, Wei Yuan's usually straight back could not help but slump a little. It was as if he was in his twilight years. Even though Feng Jin did not know what had happened, based on the information that Jiang Pingji had revealed and her reaction, he could roughly guess the truth. When the housekeeper confirmed that the servant was a man, he wished he had been blind. Lu Shi, this naive and sweet, unreliable friend of his, had actually dragged him into this kind of scandal. Even though he was able to keep his mouth shut, Wei Yuan was probably already holding a grudge against him. It would have been fine if Feng Jin didn't move, but once he did, Wei Yuan noticed him. Wei Yuan was speechless. Oh, I forgot there's another one. Streamer sighed Xianxia. Even though I know I shouldn't laugh at a time like this, I can't help but want to laugh. This Master Wei Yuan is so unlucky. His wives and concubines are being bullied and he's being cuckolded. Streamer's back Xianxia. Even though I want to laugh too, I'm more concerned about my wives and concubines. Yes, they were watching the live stream for fun. To put it simply, they were watching the gossip of others for entertainment. But the person at the center of the incident might not be so happy. Needless to say, Wei Yuan seemed to be an old-fashioned ancient Confucian. His wives and concubines were touched by a man outside. Even if he was still innocent as an ancient man, he would definitely have a knot in his heart. So, what about the unlucky women in the backyard? Based on the streamer's conversation with Qiguan Rang, Wei Yuan treated his daughters well. He was willing to plan for the rest of their lives for them. But wives and concubines were not daughters. It was a matter of a man's dignity and the color of his hat. How could he be so kind? It was one thing to watch the spectacle, but it was another thing to feel sympathy or not. Chapter 111. We provide you with wonderful novels to read. Jiang Pingji looked coldly at the series of comments and countless large donations on the live streaming screen. Most of them hoped that she could help the innocent women who were implicated. She laughed in her heart, but at the same time she was somewhat silent. It was fun to watch the drama and treat the pain of others as entertainment. But the sympathy and actions they showed after the incident were not completely fake. More than half of them were sincere. What a contradictory group of people. Jiang Pingji did not respond to the audience. Instead, she looked at Wei Yuan with interest. She guessed that the teacher had started to think that she knew about his scandal. Even though she did know about it, according to her previous actions, the situation could still be turned around. She took a step forward and kicked the artificial dumpling away with her wooden clogs, forcing it to turn over. She asked softly, "How do you plan to deal with this criminal?" Wei Yuan's face had turned black. It was as if he was on the verge of exploding. "Kill him and feed him to the dogs. Do you want to keep him alive to harm others?" Wei Yuan answered subconsciously. When he regained his composure, he realized that his tone was filled with violence. It was a far cry from his usual demeanor. As for reporting it to the authorities? If he reported it to the authorities, it would be the same as announcing his family's scandal to the world. He would be too ashamed to live. The servant, who was tied up like a dumpling and gagged, curled up on the ground and whimpered as if she was begging for mercy. "Kill him and feed him to the dogs. That's a good idea." Jiang Pingji smiled faintly. Feng Jin and Qiguan Rang, who were beside her, gave her a scrutinizing look. Feng Jin reacted quickly. After witnessing Jiang Pingji's ruthless methods, he did not expect her to be kind. Qiguan Rang, on the other hand, was shocked and curious. Shouldn't a pampered noble son be so indecisive? Shouldn't he be soft-hearted all the time? But this person was different. Not only was he not kind, but he carried a shocking coldness and hostility. "However, I came here tonight for this person. Please forgive me, teacher, and let him live for the time being." Jiang Pingji bowed and apologized. Under Wei Yuan's suspicious gaze, she explained, "Tonight I was having a drink with my father at the Yingchun brothel. I happened to see an old maid bullying a lady in the brothel. I didn't think much of it at first, but the more I looked at her, the more I felt there was something strange about her." Wei Yuan was speechless. Wait a minute, I seem to have heard something very powerful. If he hadn't heard wrongly, the kid had said that he and his father Lu Shi, the father and son, were drinking in a brothel? Qiguan Rang also felt that his worldview had been refreshed. A father and son going to that kind of place? Father and son going to that kind of place? Jiang Pingji didn't care about their strange gazes. Anyway, Lu Shi would take all the blame. Out of curiosity I followed them, but I saw a great show of people turning into living beings. After the other party took off his clothes one by one, a gray-haired old woman who was sweeping the floor turned into a man of about 30 years of age with a protruding mouth and monkey cheeks. She had wanted to leave, but she had disturbed them and captured them. After inquiring, I found out the truth. Because of this, I had to climb over the wall in the middle of the night. If I had waited until tomorrow, I'm afraid. Jiang Pingji simplified the process. She also beautified the interrogation as questioning. There was nothing bloody about it. Then she took out a small roll of bamboo slips and presented it to Wei Yuan. "Based on what I know, there are more than just these two men who know of this disguise method and blend into the backyard of others. Why do they do it? Maybe they are trying to escape from the authorities. They are probably from Song Prefecture's Meng County. They sneaked to Hejian recently." Jiang Pingji said it in a businesslike manner. She was just short of telling Wei Yuan that she had no idea what was going on in his backyard. Of course, this was just an obvious cover. Although it was useless, covering it was better than not covering it. Wei Yuan took the bamboo scroll and looked through it. His face changed from anger to ashen and then to silence. Although he was silent, the anger in his heart was stronger than before. These vermin. After a long time, Wei Yuan's face turned ashen as he smashed the bamboo scroll in his hand. Jiang Pingji looked down and did not have the slightest intention of picking up the booklet. How is this a proper scroll? It's the great achievements of those guys. On a certain day they would target a woman or a girl, disguise themselves as a woman and try to sneak into the family. They would patiently achieve their goal. Not only would they describe the woman's appearance, age, figure and skin feel, but they would also proudly write down their thoughts after the deed was done. They would also summarize the pros and cons of the operation. Of course, they would also summarize their personal experiences, such as how to silence the victim or how to coax them to have sex with them multiple times. Occasionally, they would mock the man of the house for not being able to satisfy the woman and praise themselves. But that was not the point. The point was the origin of the women. 30% of them were ordinary women from Meng County, Song Prefecture, or women who had been widowed for a long time. The other 70% were the concubines of rich merchants and poor families. There were even some unmarried girls who could not escape the clutches of those people. What's more, Wei Yuan even saw some of his acquaintances in the scroll. When he thought of his acquaintances in Meng County, Song Prefecture doing the same thing, he felt anger and sympathy. Fortunately, he did not see the contents of his own backyard. Otherwise, he would not be able to face his students. These people were originally from Meng County, Song Prefecture. They are arrogant and familiar with their methods. It's not the first time they've done this. What a joke. If they were not familiar with it, they would not have been able to write such a concise and comprehensive afterthought. In the other room, Qiguan Rang had already picked up the scroll and skimmed through it. After Wei Yuan calmed down, he frowned. If the contents are true, then the truth must be shocking. Jiang Pingji snorted. It's not just shocking. Look at this scroll. What did you discover about the materials used to make the bamboo slips? Look at the handwriting. Although it is not the work of a master, you can see that it is a solid foundation. If it was not for hard work, how could one have such skills? Besides, these families are all famous people in Meng County, Song Prefecture. Their backyards may not be as thick as an iron bucket, but it is not a place that ordinary servants can enter. How can a lowly servant easily come into contact with an unmarried wife or a married woman? Wei Yuan did not say anything. Qiguan Rang sat up straight and waved the feather fan in his hand. His cold eyes shone brightly. Everyone knew that these vermin who had been harassing women in other people's backyards for fun had a powerful background. Chapter 112. I have a guess, but I haven't verified it yet, so I can't say it out loud. Qiguan Rang looked down and turned to Jiang Pingji. Lanting came to visit late at night because she got the information from that person. If that's the case, do you have any clues about the others? Jiang Pingji shook her head. No. If she didn't know the exact number of people, she wouldn't have needed to go to Wei Yuan's place to catch the person. Those people were very cautious and had almost no contact with each other. If you trust me, you can hand the person over to me. I guarantee that he will tell you everything about his ancestors. As Jiang Pingji spoke, a faint smile hung on the corner of her lips. It made one shudder with fear, and Qiguan Rang secretly glanced at her. No matter how angry Wei Yuan was, the matter had already been settled, and it seemed that there were some unspeakable scandals involved. Wei Yuan's surname was Wei, and he was related to Wei Jingxian's family, but he wasn't as prominent as Wei Jingxian. If it was just a normal rapist, he could just kill him in secret. But if it was serious, he couldn't do anything about it. Up to you. She was very familiar with interrogations, but other than the viewers in the streaming room who were lucky enough to witness it once, no one else had seen it. Jiang Pingji didn't plan to let others see it to avoid ruining Lu Shi's reputation. Then I'll leave first. I'll come back to you after I get some information. Then she led the others away. Feng Jin stayed with Wei Yuan and Jiang Pingji. Qiguan Rang watched her leave. Suspicion flashed in his eyes, and he kept hitting his knees with his feather fan. Second Lang Junlu's way of doing things is a bit strange. He's completely different from what Mr. Wei said. Feng Jin was lost in thought when he heard Qiguan Rang's words. He snapped back to reality and looked at Qiguan Rang. Lanting is a bit out of line, but it's not strange. She's still a child, and she's at an age where her temperament isn't stable. If she's not restrained, she'll go astray. If there's a big change, it's normal for her to change. Feng Jin defended Jiang Pingji gently, which made Qiguan Rang look at him. Accident. Wei Yuan suddenly remembered that due to family matters, it had been a long time since he had gone to the Lu residence to teach a student. He didn't know much about this obedient and sensible student who he rarely worried about. He didn't even know what had happened to make this student seem like a stranger. In the past, Lu Shi had always treated him with respect and even fear. Now he was still respectful, but it was more on the surface. Mister, you don't know? A few days ago, the bandits in the mountains ran into Lanting and a group of noble ladies in Hejian County and took them away. If not for Lanting's quick wit, they might not have been able to escape unscathed. It must have been that incident that caused Lanting's temperament to change. Feng Jin didn't know what kind of person Lu Shi was in the past, and he didn't deliberately dig into it. What he saw was the willful and cunning Jiang Pingji. I've never heard of such a thing. Wei Yuan's expression softened, and there was even a hint of guilt on his face. A teacher for a day, a father for life. This saying was not only useful for students, it was also useful for teachers. Even though he always felt that his students' comprehension was too low, his reaction was too slow, and his spirituality was insufficient, he was still a student that he had taught for many years. He had feelings for his student. Something so big had happened to him, but as a teacher he had neglected it. On the other side, Jiang Pingji had neatly forced the man into a state of confusion. This time the audience in the streaming room was much calmer than the previous time. Or perhaps they were mentally prepared. Another important reason was that Jiang Pingji's behavior was in line with their subconscious idea of using violence to curb violence. If they sympathized with the beast that had harmed so many innocent women, who would sympathize with the poor women that had been abused? The ancient times were not their era. If a woman were to experience such a thing, it would be equivalent to ruining the rest of her peaceful life. Therefore there was no need to sympathize with the beast. However, even though they didn't want to punish Jiang Pingji, they couldn't stand the way she did things while commenting on the bullet screen. It was as scary as the ring of death. They were scared, but they couldn't bear to leave the streaming room. They could only use the bullet screen to protect themselves from the horrible images. Wuliang Tianzuan, high energy ahead, bullet screen protection. All the mighty ones will defend with me. Now, prosperity, democracy, civility, harmony, freedom, equality, justice, rule of law, patriotism, professionalism, integrity, friendliness. Similar duplicated bullet screens filled the entire live streaming screen, forcing Jiang Pingji to temporarily turn them off. What's your name? Jiang Pingji asked the most basic question. Lin Zhouzi. Her mouth twitched. The previous one was Lin Gosheng and this one was Lin Zhouzi. Honestly, were they really not picked up by their parents from the garbage dump or given to them as a gift? Is such a name? Because of this new idea, Jiang Pingji did not follow the previous direction. Instead she chose a different path. Do you know where the other accomplices are? As she spoke, she took out a roll of cloth from the man's clothes. There was also a small bamboo scroll inside. The contents of the scroll were similar to the previous one. They were all women from Meng County. The only difference was that the names of these women were different. At the end of the scroll she saw some information about Wei Yuan's residence. Not only did the man in front of him have his eyes on Wei Yuan's concubine, but he was also drooling over her two beautiful daughters. She flipped through Lu Shi's memories related to Wei Yuan's daughters and her face darkened. Her eyes were so cold that it was as if she was looking at a dead man. She lifted her hand and removed the bamboo scroll. Then she crushed it with her bare hands. After a while she threw the crushed bamboo scroll on the ground and used her wooden clogs to cover it up. Following Jiang Pingji's questions, the man told her everything he knew. His expression was muddled and white foam kept coming out of the corner of his mouth. His face turned from red to pale and then from pale to green. His breathing was sometimes rapid and sometimes slow. Jiang Pingji knew very well that it was impossible for a normal person to survive torture in ancient times. Not only would torture bring great harm to the body, but it would also cause a devastating blow to the fragile spiritual realm. Moreover, this kind of collapse was irreversible. Even in her era, when the medical development of the spiritual realm was so advanced, there were not many lucky people who could recover. There was not much time left for her to ask questions. Jiang Pingji picked out a few important ones. Chapter 113. Qiguan Rang was born poor, but he had a lot of experience in the borderlands. At a young age he already knew how to protect himself. He wandered between the various forces in the borderlands with ease. His knowledge and experience were abnormally rich. It was not something that a young man like Feng Jin, who only had theories, could compare to. At first Feng Jin felt that this person was difficult to get along with. However, after exchanging a few words he suddenly became interested. After a few rounds of probing, Zhou Xian felt as if he had met his match. During the conversation, the way he addressed him also changed from the distant Lang Jun to Wenjing. In ancient times, the friendship between men, especially scholars, often developed from that instant of palpitation. When I heard what Wenjing said earlier, I had a guess in my heart, but I haven't been able to verify it. What is it? Qiguan Rang tapped the feather fan in his hand on his knee and said in a serious tone, Huayu, do you know the Meng family from Meng County in Tsong Prefecture? Feng Jin didn't understand why their conversation had anything to do with the Meng family from Meng County in Zhangzhou. Before he could reveal a puzzled expression, an extremely bold guess suddenly flashed in his mind, and he was so shocked that he almost lost his composure. Wenjing, how could you? Qiguan Rang smiled coldly. His eyes became even colder and gloomier. Feng Jin's doubt was within his expectations. After all, any aristocratic family would find this kind of speculation humiliating. Our ancestors were brave and patriotic, but that doesn't mean that our descendants can inherit their legacy. He smiled coldly. The Meng family of Meng County in Song Prefecture. I heard from Huayu that you left Shangjing for some reason and didn't contact your family much. You probably haven't heard of it yet, right? Who was the Meng family from Meng County in Song Prefecture? The most famous of them all was the ancestor of the Meng family, Meng Jing Meng Ziliang, the founding noble of the Xia dynasty. He was praised as a white dragon among men by the founder of the Xia dynasty. In later generations he was also known as the God of War. There were ancestral halls dedicated to him in all 5 countries. With such a tyrannical ancestor, the Meng clan had been greatly favored by the emperor since the Xia dynasty. They had tens of thousands of households which had been inherited until the end of the Xia dynasty. Even when the 5 countries were divided into Xia, the status of the Meng family was still transcendent. This was not the original name of Meng County, but because of the Meng family, it was changed to the surname Meng. Of course, just as Qiguan Rang had ridiculed, the Mengs had a powerful ancestor who had laid down an illustrious family business. However, it did not mean that the younger generation of the Mengs could be so powerful. Not only could they not push the family to the peak, but they could also become more mediocre and absurd, living off their old capital. A gentleman's grace can be severed from 5 generations. Feng Jin was not stupid. He could guess what Qiguan Rang meant. The culprit who toyed with so many women and children in Meng County and even harmed the women in Hejian County should be from the Meng family. Never heard of what? Feng Jinsu knew what kind of people her age were like, but she still couldn't believe Qiguan Rang's guess. Naturally, it's about the matter of Song Prefecture's Meng County's commandant becoming a bandit and setting fire to the prefectural governor's manor. Qiguan Rang looked at Feng Jin's face and said with a malicious tone, "The county military chief is a retainer of the Mengs. He has always been loyal to the Mengs, but now he has rebelled against his former master and burned down the governor's manor. The reason for this has yet to be clarified. Coincidentally, the names of the official wife and daughter of the county military chief were written on the bamboo slips. Huayu, do you think there is a connection between the two?" Feng Jin's lips moved. He was usually eloquent, but at that moment his mind was a mess. He didn't know where to start. Say no more. There is a connection. Just as Feng Jin's mind was in a mess, Jiang Pingji's cold voice came from outside. He subconsciously turned his head, only to see that thin person stride into the room from outside, and then kneel down in a slightly rough manner. However, at this moment no one dared to express any dissatisfaction because her face was already about to turn ashen. She didn't dare to mention it. Oh. Qiguan Rang rubbed his feather fan on his palm. What did Lanting find out? Wei Yuan, who was at the side, became the background. Or rather, he was dumbfounded by the bombs that Qiguan Rang and Jiang Pingji threw at him. There were 4 noble families in Dongqing: the Feng family of Shangyang, the Wang family of Langjia, the Xia family of Longning, and the Meng family of Zhangzhou. In the hearts of the people of Dongqing, although the first 3 families had a long history, their reputation was far from the Mengs, which had the ancestor of the God of War. Now the 2 people in front of him were telling him that the bastard who made him a cuckold was most likely related to the Mengs? There was too much information. His brain was overloaded and he couldn't wrap his head around it. According to the confession, the one who led them was a little bastard named Meng Liang. Huayu, do you have any impression of him? Feng Jin said, I do. I have a good friend named Meng Heng. He is the eldest son of the Mengs and his second brother is Meng Liang. However, Meng Heng is polite and knows when to advance or retreat. He is a rare gentleman, which shows how his family is. How can he have such a good brother? Someone who can be friends with a rich man is naturally a rich man. Similarly, someone who can be friends with a noble family must be from a similar background. Jiang Pingji snorted. Huayu, I don't like your argument. The 9 sons of a dragon are all different. Your friend is a good one, but who can guarantee that his brother is the same? Even if they were raised together, there will be differences. Feng Jin was speechless. According to the confession, Meng Liang has been a prostitute since he was young. His mother indulged him and his father spoiled him. When he was 11 years old, all the maids and servants in the house were touched. None of them escaped. But this person likes the new and hates the old. It has become a habit for him to rape women. Although the audience in the streaming room already knew some of the inside information, they were still stunned by the valiant young man. Hongjun Laozu's Juhua. #cry. Others have been with thousands of women at the age of 11. Iron bars are ground into needles. I am still single. Guomin's husband Baio Boshan. #cry. Single +1. Are there any sisters who pity me? Zaisha Yiliankan. I Yiliankan am convinced. Zaisha Zhao Ritian. I Zhao Ritian am convinced too. Zaisha Long Outian. I Long Outian am convinced too. Jiang Pingji. Could the style of the streaming room be unified? At least not at such a serious moment. It almost made her laugh. Jiang Pingji coughed and calmed herself down. This Meng Liang likes to mingle with people from all walks of life. I don't know where he learned an excellent disguise technique. Because he looks feminine and looks like a woman, he looks like a pretty girl after dressing up a little. Even his closest relatives might not be able to recognize him. Using this advantage, he is like a fish in water. He has tricked many ignorant girls into letting go of their worries and suffering losses. Perhaps it was because he was too gullible and easy to trick. He felt disinterested and had other ideas. It was boring to act alone. No matter how great one's achievements were, it would become a one-man show without an audience. Chapter 114. If one walked too much at night, it was only natural that they would run into ghosts. Meng Liang had been fooling around for too long, and there were times when he would give himself away. It was a pity that the Meng family, the local tyrant in Zhangzhou, was so powerful that they completely suppressed the voices of the victims. In the end, they made a false accusation, causing the victims' families to break up and die. Seeing this, the victims could only grit their teeth and endure the humiliation. With his family protecting him, Meng Liang became even more unruly when he saw that he had only been scolded a little. Eventually he got into big trouble. That day, the military officer brought his wife and daughter to the Meng residence to celebrate the old matriarch's birthday. When Meng Liang saw his wife and daughter's beauty, he was overcome with lust and wanted to imitate them. However, the military officer's wife was not an ordinary woman and saw through his disguise. Meng Liang held a grudge against him, so he used his father Meng Zhan's name as an excuse to lure the captain out of the mansion. He took a few of his friends from all walks of life and took the opportunity to rape the captain's wife and daughter. The commandant's wife was still breathing, but her daughter had been raped to the point where she had lost her breath. In the end, she also went crazy and killed herself. Both mother and daughter died tragically. By the time the county commandant finished his work and returned home, it was already 3 days later. Only then did he find out that his wife and daughter had died. The Meng family concealed the cause of death and disposed of the body. Meng Liang was also restrained for a period of time. When the limelight died down, he would return to his old ways. Coincidentally, what Meng Liang had done was found out by the county commandant. Then the county commandant set fire to the prefectural governor's manor. But how could the military strength of the county commandant compare with that of the Meng family? The commandant was quickly defeated and fled deep into the mountains, his whereabouts unknown. However, this matter was far from over. Although the incident with Meng Liang was the cause, the fact that the Meng family bullied the common people and exploited the merchants is true. It caused a lot of resentment among the people. Even though the county commandant was nowhere to be found, the civil unrest in Meng County was far from over. Meng Liang was escorted out of Tsong Prefecture's Meng County by the elders of his family. He planned to go to Shangjing to lie low. His friends from all walks of life were also afraid that the Mengs would blame them for leading Meng Liang astray, so they followed Meng Liang and left Meng County in Tsong Prefecture. Feng Jin was dumbfounded. Such an absurd thing. He thought he knew enough, but he didn't expect Meng Liang's actions to change his bottom line. No matter what, the Meng family is still the descendant of a good and loyal family. Even if they are not as strict as Duke Meng's era, they should not have raised such a maggot-like beast. The Meng family has gone too far. Wei Yuan rarely scolded people, but it was clear that he was furious. Thinking of his daughter, he almost spat out a mouthful of blood. That Meng Liang is a bastard, but he also loves his life. He's very cunning. In order to prevent one person from being exposed and implicating him, these people have very little contact with each other. No one knows where everyone is hiding. Therefore, even if they manage to catch one or two of them, they would not be able to catch everyone in one fell swoop. Jiang Pingji suddenly smiled. However, there is also an advantage. Wei Yuan looked at her in confusion. Things had already turned out this way. What could be good about it? On the other hand, Qiguan Rang seemed to have thought of something. A cold glint flashed across his gloomy eyes. It is indeed very good. The deeper they hid, the better. If they lost their lives without anyone knowing, the Meng family would not be able to pursue the matter. Hejian County was not Meng County, where the Meng family could control everything. It was surrounded by dense forests and mountains. It was common for a person to be eaten by a wild beast. Feng Jin understood what they meant, but he only opened his mouth and swallowed the words he wanted to say back into his stomach. Jiang Pingji only needed to achieve her goal. I have troubled you tonight. Tomorrow I will come to your manor with gifts to apologize. I hope you can forgive my reckless behavior. Jiang Pingji looked through Lu Lanting's memories as she apologized to Wei Yuan. It was also a tactful gesture that Jiang Pingji did not want to disturb him anymore. She only needed to go home and sleep. As Jiang Pingji searched through Lu Lanting's memories, she bowed and apologized to Wei Yuan. It was getting dark, so she did not want to disturb him any longer. She wanted to go home and sleep, and she hoped that Wei Yuan would allow it. On the surface, Jiang Pingji seemed to be apologizing respectfully, but her eyes were calm. She had no intention of apologizing at all, which made Wei Yuan feel even more depressed. However, the information that had happened that night was too much for him to handle. He was a middle-aged man and he was not as energetic as he used to be. Why would I blame you? You're doing this out of good intentions. Wei Yuan let Jiang Pingji off the hook easily, but the viewers in the streaming room were not. Now, no way. Is Master Wei Yuan just going to let it go? He doesn't seem to have any intention of taking it further. What the hell is going on? Hongjun Laozu Dijua. I'm not happy. Wei Yuan is the host's teacher. I thought he was a man of indomitable spirit, but it turns out to be disappointing. He doesn't deserve to be the host's teacher. His concubine is being bullied. Ai de Ling Ling, I'm disappointed too. He's not even as brave as the captain who set fire to the manor. He should at least say something. Zai Shu Yi Liangchen, men don't have balls. If it were me, I would beat the sh*t out of Meng Liang's head. Zai Sha Long Outyen, h*t out of his head. Ha brother Liangchen, I Long Outyen admire you in this streaming room. Jiang Pingji looked at the bullet screen calmly. She thought for a while and then sent a message. Host V. Although I don't like Wei Yuan's reaction, I'm sorry to tell you that his reaction is very manly. It's not that he doesn't have a decision, but it's not convenient for him to say it in front of us. Jiang Pingji's words were like dripping water from boiling oil. It instantly caused an uproar. Xianxia, host, I'm not educated. Don't mess with me. How can he be considered a man? Jiang Pingji looked out the window speechless. According to Lu Lanting's memory, Wei Yuan's anger was mostly because his daughter was frightened and his reputation was tarnished. It was not because his concubine had cheated on him. But it was because that person was cunning and seduced Wei Yuan's cheap concubine. Cheap concubine, noble concubine, legal wife. These three terms had different meanings for Dongqing men. The legal wife was the wife, the noble concubine was the concubine with some status, and the cheap concubine was a commodity that was only bought for fun. Take a chestnut for example. If Wei Yuan's best friend came to visit and Wei Yuan asked him to stay the night, it was possible that the cheap concubine would serve him. Not to mention this, in some places where the atmosphere was more absurd, the male master would even let the pregnant cheap concubine serve the guests, or both parties would exchange cheap concubines for fun. The position of the cheap concubine in their hearts was nothing more than an object that could move. Even a clay figurine would get angry if someone touched their property without the owner's permission, but it would never reach the point where they would fight to the death. If Meng Liang had touched the county captain's concubine instead of his wife, the county captain would have been angry, but he would have tolerated it out of loyalty. Full. Under such circumstances, what weight could the cheap concubine have in Wei Yuan's heart? Wei Yuan's original intention for revenge was to seek justice for his daughter, not for the concubine. Chapter 115. We provide you with exciting novels to read. Jiang Pingji and Feng Jin had climbed over the wall, but they left openly. Wei Yuan even prepared a carriage for them. The carriage's shock absorption was not as good as the one in the Liu's, so the bumps along the way were unbearable. Feng Jin sighed. I didn't expect a gentleman like Meng Hing to have such a filthy younger brother. Why do you care if he's a gentleman or not when you're making friends? Jiang Pingji curled her lips and her eyes shone coldly. I just feel bad for Meng Hing. Feng Jin was sensitive to other people's emotions. He knew Jiang Pingji was upset, so he explained, Lanting, I'm afraid you don't know that even though Meng Hing is the legitimate son of the Mengs, his parents don't care about him. I've been his classmate for a few years. If I didn't know he was the eldest son, I would have thought he was from a branch of the Mengs. Jiang Pingji tilted her head to look at Feng Jin. He continued, there's an assessment every 3 years. Meng Heng's family background, knowledge, personality, appearance and ability aren't bad. However, his younger brother's behavior will have a huge impact on his moral evaluation. Dongqing's selection system was similar to the 9-rank system, but there was a big difference between the two. Family background, knowledge, personality, appearance, ability and moral were the 6 main categories. When Dongqing was founded, knowledge, ability and moral behavior were the top 3 categories. Family background, personality and appearance were the bottom 3. The evaluation score was 60% of the top 3 categories, 30% of the bottom 3 categories, and 10% of the evaluation officer. The standards were not implemented for long. With the intervention of the aristocratic families, the top 3 categories became family background, moral behavior and knowledge, and the bottom 3 became appearance, ability and personality. The proportion of the top 3 categories increased, and the evaluation authority was strengthened. Moral behavior belonged to the top 3 categories. Because of Meng Hing, even if Meng Hing could get an excellent grade, he would become an inferior one. Feng Jin's previous reaction was not only because he couldn't believe there was such a filthy person in the world, but also because he felt sorry for his classmate. 90% of the people who could enter the general assessment were descendants of aristocratic families. The gap between them was small. Moral behavior went from excellent to inferior. How big of an impact would it have? It was enough to make Meng Hing, who was originally expected to be in the top 3, fall into the middle of the pack and fade into the crowd. What a pity who asked him to have such a dragging brother. In this day and age, it was not popular to be responsible for one's actions alone. Meng Liang's moral integrity was questionable, which meant that the men of the Meng family were also morally questionable. The closer one was to Meng Liang, the easier it was to be implicated. It was only natural that Meng Hing would be in trouble. Why are you so worried about him? After all, he's the legitimate son of the Meng family. If the Meng family doesn't fall, he can make a comeback at any time. It's just an evaluation. What can it prove? Jiang Pingji rolled her eyes and scoffed at Feng Jin's worries. If Huayu has time to think about this, why don't you help me think about how to fool my father later? You didn't even bid farewell to me when you left the spring pavilion. What he said made so much sense that he couldn't refute a single word. The evaluation results could only affect one's initial official position, but it could not affect one's future career. No matter how much Meng Hing was not loved by his parents, he was still the eldest son of the Meng family. If he wanted to inherit the family in the future, he would have the support of the Meng family. Jiang Pingji secretly glanced at Feng Jin's expression and couldn't stop laughing in her heart. How could Dongqing not be chaotic when all the aristocratic families were messing with the court? Meng County in Song Prefecture was just a small flame. Although it was small and weak, who could say that it did not have the potential to set the prairie ablaze? Lu County Chief is not an ordinary person. How can we hide from him? Feng Jin shook his head and tried to persuade Jiang Pingji to accept her fate. Jiang Pingji snorted. Since Huayu said so, I have an idea. I just need to tell my father that there was a prostitute selling herself in the nearby pavilion and urged me to join in the fun. I left in a hurry and was afraid of being scolded by my father, so I didn't report it. Feng Jin's friends were dumbfounded. Was this the rhythm of throwing all the dirty water at him? Could they still be friends? Banning. Feng Jin's cheeks were red with anger. He had never seen such a rascal. I was just joking. Why, do you really think I would do that? Jiang Pingji made a disappointed and sad expression. Together with the gesture of holding his heart, Feng Jin was angry, but he felt even more aggrieved when he was not angry. He had made a bad friend by mistake. Outsiders say that Lu Shi's son is unrestrained and unrestrained. What they say makes sense, Yi Futian said. It's a waste to be frivolous when you are young. If you don't be frivolous, you won't be able to be so when you are old. Jiang Pingji didn't seem to hear the ridicule in Feng Jin's words. Instead, she lectured him shamelessly. I'm not criticizing you, but you look like you have seen through the world at such a young age. You talk and act like an old scholar. Your steps are more delicate than a girl's and your voice is gentle. He had rowed his boat all his life without oars. The corner of Feng Jin's mouth twitched. Not to be outdone, he retorted. If that girl is you, I'm indeed too delicate. Jiang Pingji was speechless. The audience in the streaming room held their melon seeds in their hands and watched the two pretty boys bicker. They all expressed that they had been forced to eat candy. Lanky Ubuja. The young Feng Jin has been bullied by the streamer for so long. He finally stood up for himself. Jinyin, you are stupid. What are you talking about? The streamer is obviously looking at the young Feng Jin's counterattack with a doting expression. Zaishu Yi Liangchen. I'm on the streamer's side. The CP can be broken but not reversed. The streamer will always be the aggressor. Zaixia Long Outian. Absolutely. All the little subs who try to counterattack are paper tigers. Lao Ciji Lianming. The streamer's childhood sweetheart is the aggressor. The CP matches with the streamer's doting smile. It's even more delicious. I see your chrysanthemum is poisonous. Heresy. The streamer's CP is me. She's a cute baby. 9 times in one night, */w***. Faced with such a toxic audience, even Jiang Pingji could only be speechless. To be honest, it was the first time Feng Jin had mentioned Jiang Pingji's gender. Why, there's something I don't understand. You know I'm a girl. Why are you still friends with me? Feng Jin glanced at her and said bluntly, apart from your body, which part of you looks like a girl? She couldn't blame him for always ignoring her gender and treating her as a man. Friends were friends. Gender didn't matter. It only mattered if their temperament was compatible. Jiang Pingji looked at the screen full of haha and raised her eyebrows. Vulgar words. Feng Jin said, it varies from person to person. Jiang Pingji, did this kid take the wrong medicine? Was he asking for a beating? Fortunately, Jiang Pingji was a person with a strong mentality. Feng Jin's skills couldn't affect her much. Chapter 116. Speaking of which, your temperament is similar to my younger brother's. Feng Jin raised his hand and lifted the curtain of the carriage slightly. He looked at the night sky outside and suddenly thought of something. His face was warm. Both are so mischievous and love to tease people. Jiang Pingji replied in disbelief. Teasing? I thought that your Feng family was strict and everyone was like you. Feng Jin said strangely. Lanting, didn't you say that the 9 sons of the dragon are different? Although my youngest brother and I share the same mother, our temperaments are different. He is young and intelligent, and has been doted on by his elders since he was young. Although his personality is a bit naughty, as long as he doesn't cross the line, it's fine. The direct line of descent of the Feng family had elder brother Feng Jin at the front. At the very least, there was still Feng Jin. There was no need to trouble the youngest son of the family, so he had to bear the least amount of pressure. The elders favored the eldest son, but favored and doted on the youngest son. This was a common practice in almost every family. The pitiful Feng Jin was in the middle. Although he wasn't completely ignored, he was indeed neglected compared to his eldest brother and youngest brother. Jiang Pingji glanced at Feng Jin, whose face softened at the mention of his younger brother. I really couldn't tell that you are actually a brother complex as well. What is a younger brother complex? Feng Jin carefully pondered over this term and did not understand its meaning. Jiang Pingji explained, it refers to an elder brother who likes his younger brother very much. The relationship between brothers is very good. After Feng Jin heard this, he revealed a thoughtful expression and immediately drew inferences. This term is really novel. In that case, there are also terms like brother complex, or sister complex. That's roughly what it means. It describes the deep relationship between siblings? Yes. Jiang Pingji nodded. You are worth teaching. Feng Jin couldn't help laughing. These words are clever and interesting. They are simple but catchy. Is it the local dialect of Hejian? Jiang Pingji said with a natural expression. I heard it from a traveling merchant. I don't know where it came from. The young man pondered for a while and said with a smile, so I can be considered a brother complex? Jiang Pingji chuckled. I know you three brothers have a good relationship. Next. Rumors stop with the wise and chats stop with laughter. However, Feng Jin did not understand the joke. He changed the topic and talked about other things with Jiang Pingji. Lanting, have you talked to County Chief Lu about going to Langia? Jiang Pingji was not a person who liked to stay in one place without moving. Hejian County was not small, but it was not big either. I did. Father is very supportive of me going to Langi to study, but he said that I don't need to reveal my mother's name. Jiang Pingji rested her elbows on the table and supported her chin with her right hand. Her body was tilted. Her bold and unrestrained sitting posture was an eyesore to Feng Jin. At first he didn't understand, but after thinking about it he vaguely understood the intention of Lu Shi's decision. Master Yuanjing was a real famous teacher. Although he would take care of Lu Lanting for the sake of the ancients, his initial impression of Lu Lanting was not as good as his teacher. It was not as if Lu Lanting was incapable. If she could impress Master Yuanjing with her own knowledge and talent, it would be better and more dignified than relying on her deceased mother to become Master Yuanjing's disciple. Feng Jin asked, when do you plan to leave? Jiang Pingji had never thought about it, or rather she did not really want to study in Langi County. About 2 or 3 months. Father has been in Hu County for many years and has rarely returned home. It's rare for him to stay home for 3 months. It would be a pity if I left to study now. I want to spend more time with him to fulfill my filial duties. Moreover, I need Master Gongcao's permission. Jiang Pingji's words were half true and half false. Jiang Pingji only said it to give Feng Jin an explanation. When parents are around, one should not travel far. Children should be filial to their parents. Lanting's way of thinking is the right thing to do. Feng Jin could not help but think of himself. If it were not for the fact that his parents were healthy and his siblings were still around, he would not have left home. If Lanting goes to Langi in 3 months, I'm afraid you and I will have to be separated for some time. Jiang Pingji turned to him and asked, are you leaving Hejian County? Feng Jin nodded and added, but we won't be leaving in the next 2 days. As for when we leave, that will depend on 4th Langjun. Even though Wu Majun was not valued by the emperor, he was still a prince. Feng Jin still had to respect his decision. Jiang Pingji raised her eyebrows and sneered. If that's the case, you won't be able to leave Hejian County for a while. It was easier to talk to smart people. Feng Jin understood the meaning behind Jiang Pingji's words. Wu Majun was obviously trying to win Lu Shi over to his side. He hoped that Lu Shi would support him and become a powerful bargaining chip in his fight for the position of crown prince. Hu County had become a popular place in Dongqing under Lu Shi's years of hard work. Its grain production could alleviate the food shortage in the neighboring 2 counties. In ancient times, the 2 most important bargaining chips in a war were people and grain. With grain in hand, there was nothing to worry about. If there was rice, there would naturally be manpower. To put it bluntly, if Wu Majun really managed to get Lu Shi's full support, Wu Majun could also recruit troops to besiege Shangjing when the emperor chose another prince. He could then drag his brother off the throne. It was a tradition in the royal family of Dongqing for brothers to fight against each other. Of course, no one knew if Wu Majun had such ambition at the moment. But if he succeeded in winning over Lu Shi, it would be a profitable business. Since ancient times, it had been difficult to move talented people, let alone Wu Majun, who was just an unknown prince. Lu Shi, on the other hand, was already a famous high-ranking official with real power. It was impossible to get someone with potential to work for you without putting in some effort. Therefore, Jiang Pingji concluded that Feng Jin would stay in Hejian County for a long time. Feng Jin knew what was going on. He smiled bitterly and said, since you already know, don't expose me. It was fine as long as the 2 of them knew each other well. It would be embarrassing if they were to expose each other. Jiang Pingji's thoughts lingered on Wu Majun. He suddenly remembered something. Huayu, I remember you saying that you're not engaged yet? Feng Jin nodded and laughed. He guessed, why do you ask? Don't tell me you want to be a matchmaker? If it was someone from ancient times, he or she would not have said that. But Jiang Pingji did not have that concern. She looked at Feng Jin and said, I do have that thought. Huayu is a good candidate for a husband. We should keep the goodies to ourselves. The smile on Feng Jin's face froze for a moment, and then he revealed an embarrassed expression. Chapter 117. Jiang Pingji nodded and acknowledged his guess. Father said that Madame Wei seems to have taken a liking to Wuma Jun. She wants to marry Jing heir to him. It's not that I'm bad-mouthing people behind their backs, but Wuma Jun really isn't a good candidate. If Jing heir really marries him, she'll suffer in the future. How can I bear to see that happen? Jiang Pingji was very patient with the cute girl. Most of the time she cherished her. Wei Jingxian rarely interacted with Jiang Pingji, but to the original Lu Lanting, Wei Jingxian was like a sister. He was very important. Feng Jin was speechless. Even though he did not think highly of Wuma Jun's character, his evaluation of him was not as low as Jiang Pingji's. I don't know how Masanori offended you, but you seem to hold a grudge against him. Don't you also dislike him? Jiang Pingji rolled her eyes. I treat Jing like a sister. Put yourself in her shoes and think about it. If it were you, would you be willing to hand your sister over to that kind of person? It's true that I don't really like him, but other than a few people, even Jingza himself didn't realize it. Lanting, you have good taste. To be honest, if it were me, I would be worried as well. It's just that if you entrust it to me, would you be at ease? Although I don't really care about the young talents of the younger generation in Dongqing, I can guess that you must be the ideal son-in-law in many people's eyes. I can't be wrong. Jiang Pingji said seriously. Actually, this is just my own wishful thinking. Just as you said, the marriage of children is decided by their parents. It seems useless to talk about this here. The scenery smiled without saying a word. From his point of view, Jiang Pingji mentioning this matter was a little strange, but it was also human nature. Previously, many classmates wanted to introduce their sisters to him, but he rejected them all. Without a foothold, how could he marry and start a family? Lu Lanting treated Wei Jingxian like a family member, so it was understandable that she was anxious about her marriage. The only awkward part was, Wei Jingxian was someone else's daughter and her parents were still alive. Feng Jin silently turned his head, but a brief image of Wei Jingxian appeared in his mind. She was indeed a quick-witted woman. However, when it came to quick-wittedness, none of the women he had met could compare to the one beside him. Unfortunately, according to County Chief Lu, he had no intention of restoring his identity. If he were to recover, that wouldn't do either. If it were to be made public, Lu Shi's reputation would be completely ruined. Feng Jin comforted her. Everyone has their own fate. You don't have to worry too much. I hope so. Jiang Pingji snorted at those words. In ancient times, there were too few reliable men, but she could not expect women to rely on themselves. It was unrealistic. To put it bluntly, she hated every aspect of this era, and women were the most inferior. While they were talking, the carriage had already stopped in front of the spring pavilion. Yes, they did not go to the Lu residence, nor did they go to the place where Feng Jin was staying. Instead, they went to the spring pavilion. It was already late at night, but the street was still brightly lit. The shadows of the people in the street looked especially fleeting under the candlelight. Jiang Pingji went straight to the private room. Lu Shi was sitting by the table with a delicate book in his hand. He was reading the book carefully with his eyes slightly lowered. The performers in the corner of the room were still singing in Wu Nong's soft voice. Wuma Jun sat beside him with a happy expression. It was obvious that the atmosphere between them was harmonious. There was hope for them to be friends. You're back. Lu Shi put away the book and looked up at Jiang Pingji. Did you have a good time? Not bad. Wuma Jun almost couldn't keep the smile on his face when he heard the suspicious conversation between the father and son. Not only did the father not blame his son for coming to the brothel to have fun, but he also looked gentle and concerned. It was rare to see that in life. It seemed that the rumor that Lu Shi valued his son was not without reason. Wuma Jun could not help but think that Jiang Pingji was more important to him. What Feng Jin was worried about did not happen. Otherwise, he had reason to believe that his bad friend would make him the scapegoat. If that's the case, let's go back. Lu Shi stood up and glanced at Jiang Pingji and Feng Jin. He furrowed his brows and kept a cold face. If you want to come over to listen to music in the future, remember to inform your mother first. Jiang Pingji nodded. Feng Jin was suspicious. He did not know if it was an illusion. Why did he feel that Lu Shi's attitude toward him was getting colder? Uma Jun wanted to ask Lu Shi to stay, but they were in the spring pavilion, which was not a decent place. It would be ridiculous if he did that. No matter how reluctant he was, he could only watch Lu Shi leave with his son and get into the carriage. Huai Yu and Lu Yu's son are really close. We hit it off at first sight. Feng Jin said with a smile. It's getting late. I'll go back first. Do you still want to stay here? Uma Jun shook his head. He had come to have fun and relax, but he had wanted to win Lu Shi over. Now that Lu Shi was gone, he was not in the mood to play. He might as well go back. No, I'll go back with Huai Yu. In the carriage, Lu Shi was reading the book carefully. Jiang Pingji could feel that he was faking his impatience. Father, ask whatever you want. You don't have to hold it in. Jiang Pingji took out some dried fruits from a hidden box in the carriage and threw some into her mouth. Since I came back, you've had doubts about me. Lu Shi did not bother to keep up the pretense. He looked conflicted. His eyes fell on a certain part of Jiang Pingji's clothes. Are you interested in Feng Huai Yu? Jiang Pingji said, no. Why would you ask that? Anyone could see that Feng Jin saw her as a good friend and she saw Feng Jin as a good friend and bestie. But both of you. Lu Shi's expression became even more conflicted. If the daughter was the son and Feng Jin was the woman as her father, he could at least ask in a subtle way if the two of them had done anything improper when they went out just now. But the problem was that the person in front of him was his daughter. He could not ask that question no matter how thick-skinned he was. Lu Shi could not ask, but Jiang Pingji was not simple. She followed Lu Shi's gaze and looked at her clothes. The corners of her clothes were stained with dust. So that's what happened. She understood immediately. I didn't press Feng Jin against the wall. Father, you're thinking too much. Jiang Pingji explained with a serious face. Lu Shi was speechless. Chapter 118. We provide you with wonderful novels to read. Lu Shi's lips quivered. He suddenly felt helpless about his daughter's explanation. He realized something horrifying. He subconsciously felt that his daughter had done something bad to Feng Jin, not that Feng Jin had taken advantage of her. Perhaps. Compared to his daughter's clean clothes, the dust stains on Feng Jin's clothes were more obvious. He looked like the one who had been raped and bullied. Your explanation will only make me more worried, Lu Shi said helplessly. Why didn't he just say that there was nothing wrong? Why did he have to add another sentence? It's best if there's nothing wrong. You're still young. That kind of thing is not urgent. Of course, if there's really something wrong, don't panic. Jiang Pingji was speechless. Zaishu Yeliankin. My father-in-law is amazing. He's so open-minded. Is he really a native man from ancient times? Yubi Basin Sangwashan. The host's father is a good man of the century who was taught by the time-traveling mama. He's a national prince charming here, but I think he's a bit too open-minded under... Now, I think it's normal for the host's father to have such a reaction. He's educated the host as a man through and through. He's already gotten rid of the grudge that she's a woman. Since he's a son, why would he care about those things? Kaitang Daffin Auntie, I agree with the comment above. If the host's father still holds the host to the standards of an ancient woman, it means that he hasn't crossed the threshold in his heart. He doesn't treat the host as a real son. He still thinks of the host as a daughter and subconsciously measures the host with the standards of a woman. This is biased and disgusting. Nongfu Shanquan Yudiangshuan. With this explanation, I suddenly feel that the host's father has a very high level of thinking. At least if it was me, even if I raised my daughter as a son, I would still think of her as a daughter. No matter what, it's impossible for her to be like a boy. In fact, the audience in the live streaming room had overly glorified Lu Shi. Lu Shi's thinking had not reached that level yet. The reason why he was so open-minded was because, from the beginning to the end, he had viewed his daughter as the future Empress. She was the most supreme person in the world and no one was qualified to be above her. Using the standards of women in the secular world to measure an emperor felt like scribbling on a magnificent painting and forcefully tarnishing a painting that was supposed to be passed down through the ages. It was as disgusting as eating an apple and discovering maggots in the latrine pit. Feng Jin and I went to Mr. Wei's mansion and climbed over the wall. These stains on my clothes were probably from that time. Jiang Pingji didn't know whether to laugh or cry. She tried to explain so that Lu Shi wouldn't go overboard. Did she look like someone who didn't have a bottom line and wasn't serious? Although she didn't look serious, she wasn't a fickle person. In fact, her pursuit of spirituality was higher than that of ordinary people, and her standards were also stricter. She would rather have nothing than be substandard. No matter what, it was impossible for Feng Jin to be alright. Lu Shi was just about to relax when his heart skipped a beat. He asked in shock, "Clim Wei Gongcao's wall?" In the middle of the night, his daughter was climbing the walls of Wei Yuan's house with her friends. How could he do that? That's right. Didn't I leave with the two ladies just now? I happened to meet a suspicious woman who dressed up as a woman and snuck into Yingchun house with bad intentions, so I exposed her. I didn't expect that it would turn out to be a big deal. What big deal? Lu Shi furrowed his brows. He and Wei Yuan knew each other and were friends. He knew Wei Yuan very well. If there was no inside story, then based on Wei Yuan's personality, he would definitely not let the matter rest that his daughter had climbed over his wall. The man dressed up as a woman was from Tsong Prefecture's Meng County. They snuck into someone else's house with bad intentions. The man I caught at Yingchun house pointed to Mr. Wei's house. I was afraid that something would happen, so I went to arrest him. Lu Shi's expression softened. His daughter was doing it for the good of Wei Yuan's house. No matter how unhappy the old man was, he wouldn't target her. Instead, he would owe her a favor. And then, did you catch him? So he went to Wei Yuan's house. No wonder it took him so long. It was far from Yingchun house. We've caught him, but he's brought us even more trouble. Jiang Pingji skipped over the unfortunate incident at Wei Yuan's house. It was a private matter, so she didn't want to waste her breath. According to the information, the leader of the group was from the Mengs in Tsong Prefecture's Meng County. Lu Shi's eyes flashed when he heard the name Mengs. The Mengs in Tsong Prefecture's Meng County? Yes. I heard it was caused by a man named Meng Liang. When he was in Meng County, he was lawless. He even brought people to humiliate the wife and daughter of the Mengs family, the county chief of Meng County. He forced them to become bandits. Not only did they rebel against their old master, he even burned down the county chief's mansion. Meng Liang was secretly sent away from Meng County by his family. Those people from all walks of life were also afraid of death, so they secretly followed Meng Liang, and now they came to Hejin County to create trouble. One by one, the snacks in his hand were finished. Lu Shi was dumbfounded the whole time. Such a big thing happened in Tsong Prefecture's Meng County? It was Jiang Pingji's turn to be dumbfounded. Father, you don't know? Lu Shi shook his head. Never heard of it. Although he had never heard of it, he felt that what Jiang Pingji said was true. Hu County, where he was appointed, was very far from Tsong Prefecture. The means of communication in ancient times were very backward, so the transmission of information was slow and inaccurate. He had been cooped up at home from Hu County for the past few days, so it was normal that he did not know about the news. It's okay. I'll send someone to ask about it when I get back. Lu Shi closed his eyes and tapped his right hand on his knee rhythmically. His expression was slightly stiff, as if he was enduring something. Jiang Pingji frowned when she saw his reaction. Something was wrong with his reaction. Before she could continue her analysis, Lu Shi suddenly said, "Lanting, you have to learn one thing. See through it, but don't say it." Jiang Pingji averted her gaze and shifted her attention to other things, such as the audience voting. Although the interactive livestream was a little off-topic, Jiang Pingji had strolled around Yingchun house and listened to some tunes which was in line with the theme. Not to mention that she had given the audience another good show, so the livestream was worth it. "System, it's time to settle the score," Jiang Pingji said to the system in her mind. "Let them vote after the settlement." The system was already a dead fish, but it was no match for Jiang Pingji in terms of patience. Chapter 119. A genius in a second to remember if you like it. System. Streamer Jiang Pingji's first full interactive streaming has ended perfectly. Dear viewers, are you satisfied? A. Satisfied. B. Average. C. Not satisfied. Before the viewers could click, Jiang Pingji quickly added another sentence. which made the system feel embarrassed and treacherous at the same time. Streamer V. The rating of your streaming experience will affect the level of the streaming room. From level 1 to level 2, the upper limit of 3,000 viewers will increase to 10,000. The higher the rating, the more beneficial it will be for the streaming room to level up. This stream is just a test. If the results are good, additional streams will be held from time to time in the future to satisfy the viewer's curiosity and experience. In other words, if you want to continue watching interesting streams and don't want to wait in line for a spot every day, the faster her streaming room can level up, the better your streaming experience will be. If you give a bad review on purpose, she will always remember it. Because of her words, a few naughty viewers who wanted to give a bad review stopped and gave a good review. System: Host, where is your face? It fell on the ground. Do you want me to pick it up for you? Jiang Pingji sneered and retorted, I'm just using all available resources. It's not against the rules. As for the face on the ground, you can pick it up and paste it on yourself. One of us is shameless and the other is thick-skinned. What a good match. What's the point of having a face? The system heard the threat and anger in Jiang Pingji's words. It sent out a string of words angrily. Stop, you're bullying me again. You weren't like this before. You don't love me anymore. Jiang Pingji smiled wickedly. I just like watching you watch me act shamelessly, but I can't do anything about it. System: Why did it hate her so much? The votes from 3,000 viewers ended quickly. The system was even faster. The results came out in a few breaths. Of the 3,000 votes, 2,973 were satisfied, 26 were average and 1 was not satisfied. Jiang Pingji didn't care about the negative review vote. She knew who voted it without looking. By Zhuoli, QWQ streamer, I repent. Although I know that the content of your live broadcast is very exciting and I watch it with relish, I was really scared before. Don't be mad at me for giving you a evaluation. Black Rose: I'm shocked too, but I think the live stream is just S's. It's already a lot of face to give them an average rating. Take it or leave it. Then a few people sent similar messages. It didn't seem like they were apologizing, but more like they were doing it on purpose to disgust her. Jiang Pingji's expression was the same as usual. Her heart was unmoved, or she did not care about the content at all. She did not even care about the system. How could she care about the comments of the audience who were separated by a virtual screen and a different dimension? Wouldn't that be making things difficult for him? He quickly glanced at the screen, but on the surface, it looked like his eyes were half closed as if he was taking a nap. No one could tell what was going on. The system said, although it was your first show and you used shameless methods, the final result is still very gratifying. 3,000 votes, 2,973 satisfied. In other words, the satisfaction rate was as high as a terrifying 1%. According to the system's contract, if the satisfaction rate was 95% or above, he or she would receive a gold chest. If the satisfaction rate was 80% or above, but below 95%, he or she would receive a silver chest. If the satisfaction rate was 60% or above, but below 80%, he or she would receive a bronze chest. If the satisfaction rate was less than 60%, there would be no additional reward. Jiang Pingji's satisfaction rate was as high as 1%. Without a doubt, she would receive the highest level of gold chest. When the results came out, Jiang Pingji was slightly satisfied with the number. Host V: It's too late today. The live broadcast will end here. Good night, everyone. After that, the virtual screen suddenly turned black. The streamer's status changed from in live broadcast to running on live broadcast. She heard an electronic beep, and the system notified her that she had received a reward envelope with a gold chest inside. The system said excitedly, Host, do you want to open the chest now? Jiang Pingji secretly raised her eyebrows and said to the system, Of course I want to open it, but not now. I'll open it tomorrow. The system was originally waiting for her to show off her luck and open a level-up card in one go. When the streaming room was upgraded to level 2, the system as a system would also receive some benefits. But Jiang Pingji was not anxious at all. How annoying. The emperor is not anxious, but the eunuch is. It's okay to wait for one night. Jiang Pingji did not know what the system was thinking, but it was as if she could see its anxious expression. She said leisurely, It's not the right time. No matter how anxious you are, it's useless. The system snorted and retorted, Host, who are you calling a eunuch? Although it was just a system, it also had human rights. Could not be so easily trampled on. The carriage drove all the way to the Lu mansion. After Jiang Pingji bowed to Lu Shi, she went straight to her small courtyard. In another hour the sky would be bright, but lanterns were still hung in the small courtyard. The whole small courtyard was brightly lit. The courtyard door was not locked yet. Jiang Pingji entered the courtyard and saw the two maids, Takshu and Xuanmei, leaning against the pillars. They could not hide the tiredness on their faces. They had a plain warm cloak draped over their shoulders and their heads were nodding. They could fall asleep at any time. Jiang Pingji did not have to guess to know how long they had been waiting outside. Seeing Jiang Pingji return, Takshu and Xuanmei stood up and went forward to put the warm cloak on her. Naturally, they could smell the strong scent of makeup on her. Langjun, which fox den did you come from? Takshu, who had a bad temper, could not help but complain after entering the warm room. Xuanmei secretly stared at Takshu, indicating that she should be more obedient and not cross the line. Otherwise, based on what she said just now, she could be accused of not respecting her superiors. A light punishment would be a meal, and a heavy punishment would cost her a month's worth of silver and she would lose her position as the head maid. Jiang Pingji answered smoothly, "Of course, I came from a nest of beautiful fox sisters." Takshu was speechless and could not continue. In terms of eloquence and shamelessness, the two were not at the same level. How could they compare? If Takshu is curious about the fox den, I will bring you there to see the world the next time I go out. Takshu glanced at Jiang Pingji. Langjun, you always make fun of me. Why would a good girl go to such a shady place? Chapter 120. A genius remembers love in a second? Get up. I didn't think it through. Ordinary women can't go to that kind of place in case something happens. So if she wanted to go there one day, she could only go by herself. The hot soup in the loos was kept boiling all night long. Takshu and Xuanmei only had to inform them and they would bring it over. Jiang Pingji took a good bath and washed away all the makeup and fragrance on her body. It's still early. Why don't you rest for a while? I'll wake you up when it's time. Jiang Pingji changed into her pajamas and shook her head to reject Xuanmei's suggestion. People who had a normal sleep schedule were used to staying up all night. They would definitely be sleepy, but Jiang Pingji was different. As a genetic warrior selected by the Federation, she had undergone a lot of special training, including how to get the sleep the body needed in the shortest time possible. Even an ordinary soldier of the Federation could go 3 to 5 days without sleep, let alone her. I'm not sleepy yet. Move the books in the study over. I'll read for a while. I'll pay my respects to my mother when it's daybreak. She was still awake and in good physical condition. She didn't need sleep at all. With the candlelight on the table, Jiang Pingji supported her chin with one hand and tapped the table rhythmically with the other. According to the Great Universal Geographical Map, Xianxia was a battleground for military strategists. It was easy to defend and difficult to attack. They could retreat by relying on the natural defenses. They could attack by taking advantage of the terrain, water flow, and complicated terrain. It was difficult for ordinary troops to conquer. It was also the connecting point between Dongqing and the other two countries. There were 3 natural defenses in Xianxia: Hanchang Pass, Zhangjiang Pass, and Yumen Pass. It was a battleground for military strategists. Apart from the natural defenses, another important reason was that the water and land routes there were quite developed. Whether it was transporting food or troops, it had advantages that other places didn't have. It could be said that if they could take down the 3 natural defenses, Hanchang Pass, Zhangjiang Pass, and Yumen Pass, it would basically expose the hinterland of Dongqing to the enemy. Then it would be a flat land for strong troops to conquer. With the convenient water and land routes, the fall of Dongqing would be inevitable. Jiang Pingji frowned. She knew the importance of Xianxia as soon as she saw the Great Universal Geographical Map. It didn't make sense that the Mengs didn't know the importance of Xianxia. Even though he knew the importance of the matter, he still allowed Meng Liang to court death and incite the anger of the people. She did not know what to say. But then again, Meng Liang is so fearless. Isn't it because of the Meng's profound background that gives him the confidence to commit crimes? On a smaller scale, it's just a dishonorable son of a noble family provoking the people. But on a larger scale, he's courting death. Usually, the Mengs would have found a way to suppress the matter of Meng Liang and turn it into a small matter. But now, this matter was like a small flame that seemed to be going out at any time. But it could cause a series of chain reactions and eventually lead to a big fire. Unfortunately, she was now in Hejian County and did not know much about the situation in Zhangzhou, so she could not make further judgments. After looking at the great universal geographic map of Dongqing for a long time, Jiang Pingji put away her things. The sky outside was completely bright. Takshu and Xuanmei led the other maids to deliver a set of toiletries on the dot. Jiang Pingji splashed her face with warm water to clear her head. Langjun, do you have any plans today? Father won't be able to get up for the time being. Ask the housekeeper to prepare the carriage. I'll go to Shangfu Temple first. I'll be back around noon. If Father asks, tell him that I went to Shangfu Temple to visit Master Liaochen. Father will understand. If anyone from the farm comes to pass on a message, remember to write it down and I'll deal with it when I'm back. Jiang Pingji spoke quickly like a machine gun. The system was still thinking about the gold chest. Why did the host go to Shangfu Temple to look for that old monk? Jiang Pingji smiled mysteriously and did not give a precise answer. But the system soon knew her purpose. She climbed up thousands of steps to Shangfu Temple. Unsurprisingly, Jiang Pingji found a monk waiting for her outside the temple. Although the old monk was a bit strange, he had some abilities that were not known to outsiders. Jiang Pingji thought that the monk must have known she was coming when she was still at the foot of the mountain. Didn't he say that her murderous aura caused the Buddha's aura in the temple to move? Liaochen was still in the meditation room. Jiang Pingji walked up to him and sat on the cushion opposite him. I wonder what brings you here today, young benefactor. Master Liaochen chanted the name of Buddha and twirled the prayer beads in one hand. Master, you knew about the Ziwei Emperor's aura just by looking at my face. What else can you see today? Did she come to provoke me behind Master Lu's back? Liaochen carefully looked at Jiang Pingji's face. Other than the fact that the Emperor's aura was thicker and more solid than before, there seemed to be no other changes. Jiang Pingji saw that he did not understand her meaning. Her fingers tapped on the table and she had to be more direct. How's my luck today? Master Liaochen. Did she come all the way to see him just to ask such a useless question? The system, it seemed to understand its host's thoughts a little. Master Liaochen deliberated and said, looking at your face, your luck is naturally excellent. You are not affected by the evil aura and your luck is high and vigorous. Evil creatures have brains too, okay? In actual fact, just based on the baleful aura around her that was so dense that it could not be dispersed, even if there were evil spirits, they would take the initiative to hide far away. Others were afraid of ghosts, but when it came to her, it was the worry of ghosts. Oh, thank you for your guidance, Master. Jiang Pingji clasped her hands together and made a gesture that was not very standard. Master Liaochen was dumbfounded. Even though he was a highly respected monk, he still had some doubts in his heart. What kind of scheme did this young benefactor in front of him have? In fact, it was as simple as the system guessed. Jiang Pingji only treated Master Liaochen as a human luck testing machine. Today's luck was good and it was suitable to draw a gold chest. The system, damn idiot. Since she was already here, she asked all the questions she needed to ask to avoid leaving a knot in her heart. Master Liaochen, there is one thing I don't understand. Who else can see through the so-called Ziwei Emperor's aura like you? Jiang Pingji felt that this question had to be asked clearly, in case she did not know how she was attacked. You don't have to worry about this, young lady. Master Liaochen smiled and stroked his beard. Earlier I told you that one wrong thought could cut off your chances of ascending to the highest position. This is not absolute. You are not the only one who possesses the Ziwei Emperor's aura. Chapter 121. Master Liaochen nodded. Young almsgiver has quite the spiritual root, that is indeed what he meant. Although that was what he said, the person in front of him had the densest Ziwei Emperor chi that the old monk had ever seen in his life. When Jiang Pingji heard what he said, she felt much more at ease. On the other hand, this so-called Ziwei Imperial aura was practically useless. Whether it was strong or weak, it was the person who affected it, not the other way around. No matter how rich it was, it couldn't turn a drunkard into a wise ruler. No matter how faint it was, it couldn't turn a wise gentleman into a sneaky villain. The relationship between the Ziwei Imperial aura and a person should be that the latter determined the strength of the former, not the other way around. Young benefactor, are you worried that someone will see through this and harm you? Master Liaochen suddenly smiled. If that's the case, then young benefactor can rest assured. Anyone who has this kind of eyesight, if it's not someone who has an indifferent temperament, then it's someone who lives in seclusion. No matter what kind of people they were, they would not easily get involved in the changes of the world. The general trend of the world, after being united for a long time, must be separated, and after being separated for a long time must be united. This was a process that had to be experienced, and it was not something that could be controlled by mere manpower. More importantly, to put it bluntly, there were less than 5 people in the 5 kingdoms who were at the same level as him. Dongqing alone had 6 states and 21 counties. The land area of the other 4 countries could only be larger. In addition to the vast territory of the foreign tribes, no one knew how vast this world was. How small was the probability of meeting a few people in such a vast territory? Even if he was a blind cat bumping into a dead mouse, he wouldn't run into 4 or 5 of them one after another, right? If it really happens, please forgive me. Descending the mountain was much faster than ascending it. Jiang Pingji's wooden clogs were so fast that they seemed to be flying. Soon she arrived at the foot of the mountain where Xianxia Temple was located. Alright, you can draw a chest now. Jiang Pingji entered the carriage. The coachman skillfully raised the whip and drove the horse back. The system complained about its incompetence. I really don't want to admit that you're the host. I came all the way here just to see today's luck. No matter how the system ridiculed her, Jiang Pingji remained unmoved. She opened the system mailbox and opened the golden box inside the envelope. He pressed the confirm button in the air and the box suddenly shattered. The pieces floated in the air and slowly solidified. When the golden shimmer dissipated, a golden card the size of a poker card appeared in front of her. The system, damn it, didn't they say that the drop rate of the level up card was extremely low? Jiang Pingji raised her hand and took the level up card. She had a faint smile on her lips. She was not surprised by the result of the lucky draw. See, what did I say? It's red enough, right? The system, which was already a useless fish, said weakly, let's toast tea to the lucky king. Jiang Pingji laughed involuntarily. She clamped the level up card between her 2 fingers. She exerted a little force on her knuckles and an option appeared in front of her. Little Angel System kindly reminds you that the host is currently a level 1 streamer. After using the card, the host will be promoted to level 2. The number of viewers in the live broadcast room will increase to 10,000. Are you sure you want to use the level up card? A yes, B no. Did she even have to think about it? Since it was a free card, it would be a waste if she didn't use it. Jiang Pingji did not say anything else and opened the option A. There was a crisp rustling sound in her mind. The edge of the virtual screen that was turned off exuded a light gold color, and then it went silent. System announcement. Congratulations to the host Jiang Pingji for officially becoming a level 2 streamer. The upper limit of the live broadcast room has been expanded to 10,000 viewers. Clusters of fireworks exploded on the virtual screen, and the originally simple and plain live broadcast interface had some light-colored patterns, which looked much better than the previous clean state. Jiang Pingji glanced at the upper limit. It had indeed increased to 10,000 viewers. System, start the live broadcast. Jiang Pingji ordered and the system immediately responded. The live broadcast had just started and a group of viewers rushed into the live broadcast room. Dayong Wanwu, I was scared to death. I thought the streamer wouldn't start the broadcast today. Why is it so late today? Fortunately, I had the foresight to queue up a long time in advance. Otherwise, I wouldn't have been able to squeeze in. Is this the streamer herself? Much better than the video. More importantly, the streamer has a high degree of recognition. The picture quality was absolutely high definition, and the host herself had a pure natural appearance. There were no special effects that focused on her face, no special effects that made it impossible to see her facial features, no flat and thick unibrow, no sharp chin that could stab a person to death, or a face with strange proportions. She was a clear stream in the world of live broadcasting. Mama doesn't have to worry about the baby's face blindness getting worse under. Oh, I heard that the streamer went to the brothel yesterday. I was heartbroken. I didn't manage to squeeze in until the end. I could only go to the Baidu forum to watch the video. I enjoyed it for a long time, and the more I watched, the more I regretted not watching. Kulele Yile. Why do I feel that the number of bullet screens today is much higher than before? You sick people, your hands are too fast. When the viewers enter the live broadcast room, they usually don't look at the number of viewers. However, the number of bullet screens on the screen is abnormal. Jujo 81. Wow. Did I see it wrong? Why are there 10,000 viewers? Jiang Pingji's live broadcast room was somewhat famous in that dimension. It spread in a small circle and attracted more attention. What do the viewers who are always chasing updates complain about the most? Of course, it was not easy to get a seat in the live broadcast room. There were only 3,000 viewers and it was impossible to get a seat if the internet speed was slow. What about now? Were their eyes playing tricks on them? Host V. This live broadcast room has officially been upgraded. It can now accommodate 10,000 viewers. Asterisk caret underfront caret asterisk. Faced with Jiang Pingji's bullet screen that was suspected of acting cute, many viewers felt that the contrast was cute. The streamer's words and actions were usually cold or domineering and fierce. When did she have such a soft and cute side? However, when the two completely different styles blended together, there was a different kind of cute contrast. This caused many old viewers to make a ruckus and the bullet screen was in a mess. Jiang Pingji rarely took the initiative to communicate with the viewers in the live broadcast room. It was the same this time. After explaining a little about the increase in the number of viewers in the live broadcast room, she returned to her usual self and sat quietly in the carriage. The coachman drove the carriage steadily and skillfully. Lu Shi slept until noon. His pajamas were wrinkled and his long hair was a little messy. Sitting on the bed, he saw the light coming through the door. His eyes showed some confusion, but he quickly regained his clarity. Outside the room, a maid heard the movement and asked in a gentle voice, "Master, are you awake?" "Yes, I'm awake." He tidied up his appearance a little, and the maids who had been waiting outside the door for a long time filed in. The whole process was silent. Chapter 122. There weren't many masters of the Lu residence. Other than Lu Shi, the second lady, Madame Hu and the second Langjun, there were only the two concubines and their sons and daughters, who rarely appeared in public. The masters had gentle temperaments and would not deliberately make the work of the servants more difficult. In addition, the rules and regulations left by the late wife were clear, so as long as the servants of the Lu mansion completed their tasks, they would have plenty of free time to rest. Tong Sanyang was on her way to the embroidery workshop to buy a new batch of embroidery thread when she passed by a corner gate. What do you think happened in Tsong Prefecture in Meng County? The new purchasing manager of the Lu residence and a few people dressed like commoners were whispering at the corner gate. Tong Sanyang happened to hear the entire conversation. The manager was a little angry at first, but when he saw that it was Tong Sanyang, he couldn't help but put on a flattering smile. He cupped his hands and bowed. "Aunt Tong." Tong Sanyang was 21 years old and unmarried. According to Dongqing's laws, she had to pay an extra tax. Her brother and sister-in-law felt embarrassed and forcefully forced her to get married. She agreed and went to plead with Madame Hu, persuading her to set up her own household. This was the first time in the entire Lu residence. She had Madame Hu's support, so the other managers didn't dare to offend her. Tong Sanyang's expression was cold. "You mentioned Song Prefecture in Meng County. What's going on?" The merchants who were stared at by her felt pressured. They lowered their heads and whispered, This, speak." The merchant broke out in a cold sweat and said quickly, "We are traveling merchants from Meng County in Song Prefecture. Your mansion ordered a batch of goods from our master, but they were robbed by a group of refugees and bandits when they were delivered. We are here to ask for your grace to be more lenient on the deadline. We didn't mean to delay your time, but Meng County is in a mess now. Looting and burning are everywhere. They were just a group of ordinary merchants. How could they resist the robberies? Even though the Lu residence wasn't big, their food, clothing and necessities were all exquisite. Every year they needed to purchase a lot of goods and they were generous. They were big customers, but the goods they sent were robbed before they could even leave Meng County. Now that they couldn't return the goods, they could only come to the Lu residence to negotiate." After hearing this, Tong Sanyang felt like she had lost her ability to speak. If something had happened in another county, she wouldn't have lost her composure like this, but the problem was, that was Meng County, Song Prefecture. "When did this happen?" Tong Sanyang asked coldly. The commoners bowed their heads and answered honestly, but they didn't expect Tong Sanyang to sneer at them. Although Meng County in Tsong Prefecture is within Tsong Prefecture, it is not very far from Hejin County. It will only take half a month to travel between the two counties at top speed. Such a big thing happened in Meng County. Why hasn't Hejin County heard anything about it after so long? The merchants complained incessantly. They had a lot of bitterness in their hearts, but they had no place to vent it. Aunt Tong, this incident has been known for a long time. However, the Meng army has gone too far. They don't allow refugees to enter and leave Meng County as they wish, and they also don't allow this news to spread. We wanted to transport the goods out, but we were stopped. After much difficulty, we managed to get the customs documents, but we were robbed by the mob. As they spoke of the sad part, the men were in a sorry state. The money that the Lu residents earned from the goods they ordered every year was enough for them to live on for half a year. Now that the goods were robbed by the mob, they lost their goods and money, and they almost died on the way to Hejin County. Their days were like hell, and just thinking about it made them sad. If the Lu residents felt that they were wasting time and asked for compensation, then their losses would be even greater. Tong Sanyang's face turned solemn and her palms were sweaty. He seemed to remember something. This matter is of great importance and we need Master's attention. How about this? Let the steward take you to wash up and I will report this to Master. If you have anything to say, you can tell Master later. When Tong Sanyang told Lu Shi about the incident, he was burning incense and practicing calligraphy. He was surrounded by a tranquil atmosphere. He put down the brush in his hand without changing his expression. If that's the case, let's ask those people to come here. He was wondering why only a few people knew about such a big incident in Meng County. It turned out that the Meng army had intentionally blocked the news. The Meng army? Lu Shi felt a flash of coldness in his heart, and a murderous look flashed across his calm eyes. How could you have such a day, Mei? The horse let out a long sigh, and the carriage slowed down until it stopped in front of the Lu residence. Jiang Pingji got out of the carriage and jumped off before the coachman could bring the bench. She saw that there was an unfamiliar carriage parked in front of the door. She frowned and asked the gatekeeper, "Is there a guest?" The gatekeeper answered respectfully, "Second Langjun, it's the lady's maiden family." Mother's side? Jiang Pingji raised her eyebrows. I wonder who it is. Because Lu Shi had gone to Hu County to take up his post, the women in the family rarely went out. They rarely interacted with Lu Shi's family, not to mention the second lady's maiden family in Langyi County. They would only interact with each other during festivals, but they rarely interacted with each other. Wild beasts had a strong desire to possess their own territory. They would sense the presence of a stranger. Although Jiang Pingji had not reached that level yet, along the way, there were indeed some unfamiliar traces in the Lu residence that should not have been there, which made her unhappy. Before she entered the house, she could already hear the soft and sweet voice of a young girl coming from inside. The young girl looked to be about 13 or 14 years old, wearing a pink dress. Her eyebrows were like the mountains in the distance, and her skin was like a peach blossom with a smile. Her cheeks carried a bit of baby fat, making her look even younger. Her eyes seemed to be filled with a clear spring, clear and bright. Her nose was tall and straight, and her cherry lips were red even though they weren't dotted, causing one to be unable to help but think of the blooming peach blossoms under the spring sun. See another budding loli. "Uncle, is this cousin Lanting?" the girl asked Lu Shi with a smile when she turned her head to see Jiang Pingji. Jiang Pingji did not need to look at the streaming room to know that the bullet screen was full of screams and howls. No matter which world it was, there was no shortage of good-looking people. "You're courting death. Oh, so cute. She has a clear voice and a soft body. She's a pure natural loli." Lao Ciji Lianmeng. I've realized that so far the overall appearance of the host's world is really good. There are almost no crooked people. At the very least, they have good facial features. Stop crying. It's a paradise for those who are obsessed with looks. Jiang Pingji glanced at the girl coldly. "Host V, what's so cute about a stick?" Everyone in the streaming room was dumbfounded. Chapter 123. What does that mean? I understand. Jiang Pingji pretended to be cold, but Lu Shi smiled. "Yes, this is Lanting." He didn't want to continue the introduction. The girl seemed to realize that and she looked embarrassed. Jiang Pingji sat down. She seemed to be looking at the tea in her cup, but she was actually sizing up the girl, and Lu Shi. There was nothing much to say about the girl. She pretended to be smart, but she was full of flaws. Jiang Pingji believed that even if the girl was blind, she would still be able to smell the unbearable stench on her. What was interesting was Lu Shi's attitude. Even though the man maintained a seemingly intimate but actually distant smile and treated the guests seriously, from his eyes and the slight changes in his facial muscles, as well as the movements of his fingers, it was clear that he hated the girl very much. No, it was not enough to say that he hated her. It was more like finding the dishes on New Year's Eve filled with rotting animal corpses and other creatures' excrement. It was disgusting. The girl seemed to want to talk about Jiang Pingji, but Lu Shi steered the topic away. The two seemed to be friendly, but they talked for a long time. Finally, the girl talked about the main purpose of the visit. She wanted to see the second lady. Jiang Pingji thought Lu Shi would refuse or delay, but she didn't expect him to agree without thinking. She frowned and took the initiative to say to Lu Shi, "The doctor said that my mother is depressed and it's not good for her to recover. I think she will be happier if she hears that someone from her family is here. You haven't been here for a long time, so I'm afraid you don't know much about the place. I'm overstepping my boundaries. I'll take you to my mother's place." Lu Shi frowned, but he didn't say anything. "Why are you looking at me like that?" Jiang Pingji caught the girl's gaze as if she had eyes on the back of her head. The girl blushed. "Lanting, the emperor is walking in front. How can you say that I'm peeking at you?" Jiang Pingji said coldly, "Oh." Everyone was dumbfounded. The viewers in the streaming room were waiting for her to gain favor with the Lolita. "Ho Dandan, streamer, you can't be like this. QWQ should communicate more with lowly girls." "Xingang, I feel that the host's reaction is not quite right. He seems to be holding back some big move." Lao Cg Lianmeng, can I say that as an old driver I already understand the host's intention? There was something fishy about that girl. The keywords old driver and the young lady is fishy. Extended, it meant that the words Jiang Pingji had just said were meaningful. All of a sudden, all the viewers in the live streaming channel expressed, "Thinking about it is terrifying." However, there were also innocent children who didn't understand and asked questions. Yiguguang Spatijupi, why do I feel like you all understand? Can someone explain? Everyone expressed that it was rare to find a clean and pure seedling among a group of dirty old drivers, so it was better not to pollute it. Unexpectedly, Jiang Pingji intervened. "Host V, you'll know when you're old enough. Eating grapes, spitting grape skin. Eh?" There were so many bullet screens, but the host saw me and even replied. I felt so honored. Jiang Pingji smiled in her heart. She didn't just pay attention to one person's bullet screen. She saw everyone's bullet screen clearly. The two of them were quite lucky. The second lady had just woken up and seemed to be in good spirits. Hearing Jiang Pingji's message, the second lady was slightly startled. She frowned and said, "Help me up." She sat in front of the dressing table and looked at her haggard face in the bronze mirror. Her expression was indifferent as she let the maid help her with her makeup. Her long hair was tied up in a bun. Because she was still sick, she didn't have many accessories on. She only wore 2 hairpins for decoration, so she didn't look too shabby. She had changed out of her wrinkled pajamas and changed into casual clothes that still had the fragrance of honey locust. With the help of the maid, she no longer looked haggard and tired. Instead, she looked more languid and elegant. "That's good. Let's go see that." The second madam's tone was stiff for a moment before a beautiful smile bloomed on her face. She gave off a domineering and oppressive aura. "My good niece." The second lady's strong aura was similar to the arrogant madam who. For a moment, some of the inexperienced maids muttered to themselves, but they didn't dare to express their thoughts. Instead, they were even more respectful. Jiang Pingji saw the tidied-up second lady sitting in the main seat of the main room. Her eyebrows twitched. What she feared would come true. "Mother, you look much better than yesterday," Jiang Pingji said calmly. Jiang Pingji said calmly. She wanted to block the line of sight between the girl and the second lady. Unfortunately, the body she was in was that of a 12-year-old child. It had yet to fully develop, and it was almost a head shorter than the girl behind it. "And this is?" The second lady nodded and looked at Jiang Pingji lovingly. When she saw a familiar girl behind Jiang Pingji, her smile stiffened uncontrollably. She quickly regained her composure and teased Jiang Pingji with a smile. Which family are you from? You look so beautiful and adorable. Could it be that you brought her here today because you're pleased with her? It was Jiang Pingji's turn to be speechless. She said with a straight face, Mother, please don't tease me anymore. I don't want to ruin her reputation. Could it be that the maidservant who notified Mother just now didn't tell Mother clearly that there's a guest at home today and it's a cousin from Mother's maiden family? The second lady covered her mouth with her handkerchief and chuckled. She glanced at Jiang Pingji. You've really grown up. Can't I tease you a little? After saying that, the second lady shifted her gaze to the girl. She looked at her from head to toe without batting an eyelid. She had a familiar expression on her face. You look very familiar. I wonder which sister you are. Why did they allow you, a girl, to come all the way to Hejian County? The girl turned her head to look at Jiang Pingji awkwardly. She pulled her handkerchief nervously and looked at the second lady longingly. What was going on? She was hinting that it was inappropriate for an outsider like her to be present if she had something important to say to the second lady. Jiang Pingji looked at the girl's movements and eyes in silence. She sneered in her heart. She was smart enough to see through the girl's hint. However, she didn't want to follow the girl's wishes. She refused to move and didn't give her a chance to talk to the second lady alone. The atmosphere was awkward. In the end, the second lady asked Jiang Pingji to leave. Although she was sent out, her 5 senses were heightened at this moment. Even though she was 30 to 50 meters away, she could still clearly hear the conversation between the two people in the room. It wasn't that she had any ulterior motives, but she was worried about the second lady. After making sure that Jiang Pingji was far away, the second lady looked at the girl. You've grown up. As soon as the second lady opened her mouth, the girl suddenly knelt down and kneeled in front of the second lady. Her voice was choked with emotion. Mother, I miss you. Chapter 124. Mother, Son. The spectators were so shocked that they dropped their melon seeds. With the help of the special hidden camera angle of the streaming system, the audience in the streaming room could clearly see what was happening in the room even if they did not have Jiang Pingji's 5 senses. They expressed that they were all scared out of their wits. You're courting death. I'm scared to death. Could it be that the girl is the original owner of the host's body? If she wasn't the original owner of this body, why would she call the second Madam Mother? At first glance, this logic seemed to be somewhat interesting. However, if one thought about it for a bit, they would know that it was nonsense. Lao Ciji Lianming. Now is not the time to worry about this, right? Didn't you hear that sound? Although the young man's voice was still changing and it was difficult to distinguish whether he was male or female, if one listened carefully, one could still distinguish that there was a big difference between a male and female voice. The voice that the youth blurted out just now was clearly that of a youth, not a girl. In other words, Jiang Pingji's sh*t stirrer had a deeper meaning. She was really a girl. The viewers in the livestream room clutched their chests, expressing that they were hurt, feeling that they had fallen into a trap. Why would a man dress up as a girl? They could understand cosplay as a hobby, but it shouldn't be built on the basis of hurting their young hearts. Where's your sincerity? Fed to the dogs. It was as if someone had finally managed to hook up with a goddess. After going through a lot of trouble, the two of them agreed on a time, entered the room and even took off their pants. In the end, the goddess told him that she was a man with a penis and that he could only endure it. Where's the basic trust between people? What about trust? What about trust? Why did they have to hurt each other? Of course, there were also people who were gloating. Cafeteria Daffinanti. It's so cute. It must be blue boy paper. */w***. Jiang Pingji was speechless. Can you straighten your tongue before you speak? It didn't take me much effort to get it. I thought I would have to turn the entire Hejian County upside down. I didn't expect it to come to me. She casually plucked a leaf, wiped it clean and held it in her mouth. She had a sloppy look on her face without the slightest hint of elegance. The system was puzzled. What do you mean by that? Jiang Pingji secretly rolled her eyes. Do you still remember what happened yesterday? He is the leader I'm looking for. He's Meng Liang. The system was so shocked that it typed a few exclamation marks. So he's trying to sneak into the Lu residence and cause trouble. I'm afraid that's not his main purpose for coming to the Lu mansion. Jiang Pingji said calmly. Rather than saying that he sneaked in, it's better to say that he moved in openly. His purpose is to get the Lus to help him conceal his identity. Don't forget that Meng Liang is being chased by a captain who disappeared. Maybe that captain is just hiding and following him, waiting for an opportunity to assassinate him. But how did you know he was Meng Liang? The system expressed that it had initially thought that the other party was a pure girl. Judging from her initial attitude, she should have seen through his disguise the first time they met. If it had not happened last night, the expression on Meng Liang's head would have been, a man dressed as a woman with a promiscuous private life. But Jiang Pingji had already known about Meng Liang's actions. She did not kill him the moment they met, which was something to be thankful for. Jiang Pingji said lightly, with your IQ, I think it's hard to explain. The system, F***CK. Mother, I miss you. The girl. No, Meng Liang could not stop crying. In comparison, the second wife's reaction was more thought-provoking. You have your own parents to love you. Who am I, your mother? She looked down as if she had seen through the mortal world, but there was a hint of sadness and pity in her eyes. Meng Liang, who had been observing her in secret, saw it. Mother, are you reprimanding me for not being filial and forcing me to die? Meng Liang's eyes were red as he bit his lower lip and whispered, Mother, you're a good person. After separating from father, you got married. Did you think about my situation with brother in the Meng family? That sentence was like a sharp, snow-white knife, piercing into the second madam's heart. The fatal stab. That lowly servant girl instigated father all these years. Not only did she suppress and treat brother harshly, she also supported our son both openly and secretly. Not only did she cause dissension between our son and brother, she also intentionally turned our son into a playboy until he committed a grave mistake. What a vicious scheme to kill two birds with one stone. The second wife looked down at Meng Liang, who was kneeling on the ground and holding back his tears. She said coldly, You've seen it clearly. Mother, you have to save me this time. Meng Liang looked up, his face full of tears. If Mother did not do anything, I would not have been able to live. Mother, I beg you, you have to save me. I'm not afraid of death, I just don't want to die with a bad reputation. If I die, that B***T will not let brother go. The second wife raised her hand to her forehead. Her head was throbbing. A man doesn't cry easily. You're crying like this. What's the difference between you and a girl? That B***T is good. She raised you into a man who is neither a man nor a woman. You don't have the noble bearing of Duke Meng. You know she's trying to kill you by flattering you. Why didn't you control yourself? Instead you chose to indulge yourself? Her voice became stern and she scolded him. Meng Liang looked respectful on the surface, but he was secretly clenching his fists. The second wife's heart softened. Tell me, what did you do this time? Mother, don't be angry. I didn't want this to happen. Meng Liang quickly said, although I know she's trying to kill me by flattering me, I've been wearing this mask for too long. In the end, I can't tell who is who. I swear to you that I did not do those heartless things. That B***T deliberately framed me. She wanted to destroy me completely to pave the way for the baby in her belly. Get to the point. The second wife's chest was heaving up and down. She seemed to be angry. Meng Liang mumbled about what happened in Tsang Prefecture's Meng County. However, when it came out of his mouth, he had another explanation. The death of the commandant's wife and daughter really had nothing to do with me. That was clearly a false accusation. But because of my ridiculous behavior, everyone in the Meng family believed it was true. That B***T even hit me when I was down. Father said that he doesn't have a son anymore. He even wanted to use Rattan to beat me to death. If I hadn't pretended to be a maid and escaped, I'm afraid I would have been. At this point, Meng Liang's body trembled. He seemed to remember the feeling of being beaten by Rattan. Chapter 125. A genius in a second. Remember to go away? We provide you with exciting novels to read. Wanyan Lolikan. Listening to their conversation, I suddenly feel sorry for the boy named Meng Liang. His mother divorced his father at a young age and he seems to have an evil stepmother. Most of the ridiculous things he did after that were led by someone else. Even if he's responsible, it's only 50%. After all, it's hard for a child to survive without his mother's protection in ancient times. Cafeteria Daffin Auntie, seeing him cry so pitifully makes my heart ache. He was almost beaten to death by his father, and he had to disguise himself as a woman to escape. After escaping, he took the blame and was chased by some military officer. He's still young, just a kid. People with good looks were always more likely to receive preferential treatment. After learning about Meng Liang's tragic experience, a large number of viewers in the streaming room switched sides and expressed their sympathy for the boy. Of course, there were also a small number of viewers who disagreed with the sentiment. Although I was also shaken, the host didn't seem to have any reaction. I even felt that the smile on her face was a little sarcastic. Based on my trust in the host's intelligence, I felt that Meng Liang didn't deserve any sympathy. Like Yubus, I agree. If I don't want to be slapped in the face by the plot twist, I'd better take the host's side. Jiang Pingji held a leaf in her mouth, multitasking. She watched the bullet screen while paying attention to the touching meeting between the mother and son in the room. At the same time, a bunch of data about the second lady flashed in her mind, slowly forming a clear outline. Up until the end of the mother and son conversation, what Jiang Pingji was worried about didn't happen. Meng Liang behaved the whole time. That night, when the second lady came out to have dinner with her family, Madame Hu said that she wasn't feeling well. The two of them were like kings who didn't see each other. Jiang Pingji followed the rule of not talking during meals and finished a portion of food for 3 people. She forgot to mention that when the maid served her, the rice in the bowl was compacted, and the meat and vegetable dishes were plentiful. Maybe it was more than 3 people's portions? Thinking about how the others ate like cats, she felt that she probably ate 4 or 5 people's portions. Although Meng Liang was the second lady's son, he was still considered an outsider in the Lu manor and couldn't stay in the inner court for too long. Father. Jiang Pingji sat in front of the desk and practiced her handwriting. It was better to have someone to teach her. At least her handwriting had improved a lot. Lu, she grunted in response. She put down her pen and asked seriously, that Meng Liang, is he really mother's biological son? Lu Shi's eyes flashed with a hint of playfulness and helplessness. Nominally that should be the case. On the other hand, it isn't. Jiang Pingji asked. Lu Shi was choked by the rhetorical question, but he didn't want to reveal everything so quickly. He still wanted to struggle. Yes or no, what's the difference between the two? If it is, leave his corpse intact and give him the last bit of dignity. If it isn't, he will naturally die without a complete corpse. Leaving him alive is just a waste of food. Jiang Pingji wouldn't take the initiative to poke her nose into other people's business, but it was a different story if someone took the initiative to bump into her. Lu Shi focused on the former and asked in disbelief, if Meng Liang was really your aunt's son, why would you think that I wouldn't? Jiang Pingji looked at him in confusion. Does it have anything to do with family? Lu Shi was stumped by the question. Legally, it didn't have anything to do with the family, but what about the family? Jiang Pingji took a sip of tea to moisten her tongue. What you said just now also shows that Meng Liang isn't. It's impossible to argue with a non-existent hypothesis over an impossible question. She felt like she had nothing better to do. Lu Shi couldn't help but blush when he heard what she didn't finish. Meng Liang did evil, so someone will punish him. Even if Meng Liang did deserve to die, he didn't understand why his daughter was so eager to kill him. For justice? First of all, Meng Liang is a child of the Mengs. He is loved by his parents and elders. Look at how much trouble he caused in Tsang Prefecture. How did the Mengs deal with him? He was secretly sent out of Tsang Prefecture to seek protection in Shangjing. In other words, Meng Liang is someone the Mengs must protect. The government still has to rely on the Mengs' reputation, and the Mengs also need to guard Tsang Prefecture. So how could Meng Liang die? Meng Liang escaped from Tsang Prefecture and even had the mood to harm the girls in Hejian County. How was he in danger? As for seeking protection from the Lus, half of the reason was that he was being hunted by the county military officer. With Lu Shi's influence in Hejian County, the county military officer couldn't do anything to him, so Meng Liang could rest easy. The other reason was that he had his eyes on the women of the Lus. Lu Shi had to admit that what Jiang Pingji said was true, but he didn't think it was a reason for her to want Meng Liang's life. I don't want to hear these high-sounding reasons. Tell me what's on your mind. There are 3 reasons. First, a cockroach jumped into my house. Can't I slap it to death? Second, Meng Liang entered the house under the guise of my mother's daughter. That identity can save his life, but it can also kill him. It's a good opportunity and I don't want to miss it. Even if someone died, it would be the second lady's niece. What did it have to do with Meng Liang? What's the third reason? Lucy thought that was her reason. Meng Liang is useless, but it's worth it to use his life to buy people's hearts. Jiang Pingji smiled. The corners of her eyes turned up as she smiled, which made her look more cunning. Lucy sat where he was in silence. Buy people's hearts? For that county military officer? It was a good deal. But Dongqing hadn't been destroyed yet. Was it a good idea for his daughter to cause trouble so early? Lucy had misunderstood. Was Jiang Pingji the kind of person who wanted to see the world in chaos and cause trouble everywhere? She admired the county captain. He was a courageous man. Coincidentally, Meng Liang was in her hands. Coincidentally, the troop that she was training was lacking a courageous leader. So why not have the best of both worlds? Save the county captain, get rid of Meng Liang and find an alpha wolf for the troop? As the saying goes, a good leader can change the atmosphere of an army. The county military officer had led troops in Song Prefecture's Meng County. Even though she didn't know how capable he was, he could betray his former master, set fire to the governor's manor and escape unscathed. If the Mengs didn't value him, she would put him in an important position. Together with Su Ku, one was in charge of external affairs and the other was in charge of internal affairs. It was a perfect match. As for whether or not the other party was willing to submit, it was not a problem for him to go from a county military officer to a small leader of a small troop. Chapter 126. The system said, "So you plan to use Meng Liang's life in exchange for his loyalty? Have you asked for Meng Liang's opinion before doing so?" Jiang Pingji snorted and asked the system, "Do I need to ask for the opinion of a prisoner who has been deprived of all his rights?" The system said, "You want to go to heaven?" Jiang Pingji laughed and rolled her eyes. "I've never come down from heaven." The system was speechless. Could she be any more shameless than that? The system was not the only one who thought that Jiang Pingji wanted to go to heaven. Even Lucy felt the same way. At a time like this, shouldn't a normal person be thinking about how to get rid of the hot potato that was Meng Liang? Or should they be preparing to protect themselves so that they wouldn't get revenge because of Meng Liang? But what about Jiang Pingji? Her first reaction was to use Meng Liang as a favor to win him over. Could it be that this was the main reason why she could become the Taizu of the Jiang dynasty in the future? And why all her opponents who competed with her for supremacy were either killed or imprisoned forever, and almost none of them could die of old age? To be honest, for the first time Lucy felt the pressure on his shoulders. "Father, you don't agree?" Jiang Pingji frowned when she saw Lucy's silence. She recalled the conversation and felt that she had overlooked something. "It's not that I'm against it. From the bottom of my heart I support it. But, Lanting, don't you think you're being too cold? It's just a silly assumption. But if it's true, then Meng Liang is your stepmother's son. Have you thought about how sad your stepmother will be when you say you want to kill Meng Liang with your own hands?" Lucy wanted to be tactful, but the words that came out of his mouth were too direct. "Your mother treats you well. Can you bear to kill her son in return?" Jiang Pingji looked down. Lucy's question was indeed something she had overlooked. Or rather, she had never cared about it. In ancient times, people were particular about bloodlines. But Jiang Pingji had never had such an impression. She was an orphan from the Federal War. Her parents' dates of birth and death were unknown. She had no memory of them at all. It was not that she did not remember them, but her memory had been erased. This was something that almost every genetic warrior would experience. Genetic warriors were a combat force secretly nurtured by the Federation. They were born for the sake of victory. As long as they were absolutely loyal, the rest of their memories would only be a burden. Before being nurtured, those memories were not allowed to exist. This was also to screen out the possible existence of spies. However, Jiang Pingji was probably an anomaly because her memory had not been completely erased. She vaguely remembered some old things. Of course, those past events were not pleasant memories for a 3-year-old child. I have indeed neglected this point. However, even if I have misgivings, so what? Out of respect for my mother, I'll turn a blind eye to it? Allow a disgusting insect to strut around in front of me, and then continue to do dirty things to the women in the residence? In my opinion, this kind of conflict is meaningless. If mother blames me for Meng Liang's death. Jiang Pingji paused and smiled. Father, you've reminded me. If Meng Liang is to die, he should die by someone else's hand. Wuxia was speechless. What she said seemed to make sense. Regardless of whether she was conflicted or not, the result would be Meng Liang's death. So, why was she conflicted? She expressed her struggle through her rich and painful inner thoughts. She expressed that she cared about the second lady's feelings, and then she continued to do what she had to do after the pain. Meng Liang still had to die. From Jiang Pingji's point of view, it was no different from taking off one's pants and farting. After a long time, Wuxia let out a long sigh. If your mother heard this, I don't know how heartbroken she would be. Yes, she would be heartbroken, not sad. Jiang Pingji did not know that the mother Wuxia was talking about was not the second lady, but Gu Min had once told Wuxia that, according to historical research, the Emperor Qin of the Jiang dynasty had a very serious emotional disorder. It was a very serious mental illness, so serious that it caused political turmoil. In other words, his daughter had already started to get sick, but it was not as serious as it seemed. Thinking about this, Wuxia's other emotions gave way to the heartache in his heart. He was secretly glad that it was better to find out sooner than later. The sooner he could see the doctor and take the medicine, the sooner he could recover. He raised his hand and stroked Jiang Pingji's hair. It's okay. Let the doctor come and take a look. You can't hide your illness for fear of treatment. What kind of illness was mental illness? Wuxia did not understand because he was not a doctor. That kind of problem should be solved by professionals. Jiang Pingji was speechless. She had thought that it would create a rift between her and Wuxia, or that he would be wary of her, but things did not go according to plan. Wuxia reminded her, Meng Liang is indeed a fake, but your mother does have a son. He is Meng Liang's brother Meng Heng. If you meet him in the future, don't fight and get along with him. He is a talented person. Was he hinting for her to poach him? Jiang Pingji thought expressionlessly, if Meng Liang is not my mother's son, why would he do that? Even if he was a fake, he should be pretending to be Meng Heng, not Meng Liang. It's a long story. The grudges of the previous generation are all about the private affairs in the backyard. Wuxia looked worried when he mentioned it, but he did not hide it from Jiang Pingji. You're not young anymore. It's good to hear about it. Otherwise, you will be deceived in the future. Jiang Pingji was speechless. Wait a minute, there seems to be something wrong with these words. Wuxia continued. He changed the way he addressed her to distinguish Gu Min from his second wife. When your aunt was still a virgin, her name was Gu Zhen. Although she was a daughter of a concubine, she was very close to Gu Min. She was like a mother to Gu Min, so she was not much different from a legitimate daughter. When she was 15 years old, she was engaged to Meng Zhan of the Mengs. But most men in the world like the new and hate the old, and few are devoted. I was wrong. I didn't expect him to be a beast in human skin. Jiang Pingji listened carefully and frowned. Is the Meng Zhan you mentioned the current chief of Meng Prefecture? The man who connived with Meng Liang, forced his men to betray him and burned down the chief's manor? That was incredible. Wuxia looked disgusted when he mentioned it. Yes. Chapter 127. We provide you with wonderful novels to read. How did the second lady know that Meng Liang wasn't her son? It was simple. She tried her best to give birth to the child. She heard people say that the cinnabar mole between her husband's eyebrows was beautiful and that he was blessed. But when she woke up, she found that her son didn't have a cinnabar mole between his eyebrows. He was born weak and small. 2 days later, she heard that Meng Zhan's concubine had given birth to a child who died prematurely. Because the child died prematurely, it was buried hastily. Also, the child had a mole between his eyebrows. The second lady was suspicious. She tried to ask Meng Zhan about it to see his reaction. However, the relationship between them had been broken for a long time. Meng Zhan always yelled at her and humiliated her. He didn't care about her dignity as the matriarch of the family. He helped his concubines torture her. The second lady's body quickly deteriorated due to the oppressive life and the lack of care after the birth. But this violent life was just the beginning. Meng Zhan believed that the second son she gave birth to was the son of adultery. He hated her to the core. How could he let her stay in his yard so comfortably? But if he killed her, he thought it would be too easy on her. 5 or 6 years of torture was enough to turn a beautiful lady into a woman with sunken eyes. She was as skinny as a stick. She looked like neither a human nor a ghost. Meng Zhan didn't want to kill her. But it was better to stab her than to torture her with a blunt knife. In the first 2 years, Meng Zhan and your aunt had a good relationship. There were some conflicts but nothing serious. I went to Meng County with Gu Min to visit your aunt a few times. Not long after, your eldest brother passed away. Gu Min's health was getting worse. The two families had less contact. It was my fault for trusting Meng Zhan too much. I didn't realize that the things we used to communicate with each other were not prepared by your aunt. Gu Min's body got better after she gave birth to twins. When she started to manage the account books again, she realized that there was something wrong with the communication between the Lus and Meng Zhans. Gu Min, who was always smart, noticed something was wrong. She tried to send invitations to the Mengs a few times. Of course, none of the invitations reached Gu Zhen. They were like stones in the ocean. The Mengs of Zhangzhou are so powerful. No matter if I visited your residence or sent an invitation, I was unable to see your aunt. At that time, Lu Shi felt that his wife was overthinking things. He and Meng Zhan were classmates and close friends. They were also brothers-in-law. Gu Zhen was in Meng Zhan's backyard. What could possibly happen? In the end, he was slapped in the face. Gu Min couldn't find out what had happened in the backyard of the Meng's residence, but she could start from other places. Finally, after much difficulty, he managed to find the maidservant who had once served Gu Zhen. Only then did he manage to get some information from her. Meng Zhan seemed to be extremely dissatisfied with Gu Zhen occupying the position of his wife. He wanted her to abdicate. Of course, none of the women who had entered the Meng's residence could leave. Regardless of whether they lived or died, they had to belong to the Mengs. Min heard from the maid that Meng Zhan's favorite concubine had threatened to turn your aunt into a human swine. At that time, she didn't think about anything and directly went to the door to ask for your aunt. If it weren't for my vigilance, I might not have been able to escape unscathed. Jiang Pingji pursed her lips. How dare you be so arrogant? Wuxia sneered. His eyes were full of sarcasm. That's arrogant? Gu Min had forced herself to go to the door and take away the wife of a noble family. She had even let all the children of the Mengs see Gu Zhen's grotesque appearance. Anyone with a discerning eye could tell how heartless Meng Zhan was. He had tortured the wife of a noble family to such an extent. The whole Mengs had been humiliated. Gu Min was so angry that she asked Lu Shi to write a letter of separation for Gu Zhen in a fit of rage. As for whether to persuade them to separate or not, well, Gu Min wasn't a sister who couldn't afford a divorce. What right did she have to make her sister compromise and be abused as a maidservant? Of course, with the power of the Mengs, the scandal didn't spread, but the hatred had been formed. Your aunt already knew that Meng Liang, who was the second son of the Mengs, was not her biological son. He was the son of a concubine. However, the Mengs didn't seem to know that. Meng Liang thought she didn't know either. Otherwise, why would he walk into the trap? At this point, Lu Shi suddenly showed a trace of a smile. Jiang Pingji smiled helplessly. My mother is just being naughty. How did it feel to hear the son of one's enemy call one's mother and call his own mother a lowly servant in front of one's face? It did relieve some of my anger, but more than that, it was suffocating. Lu Shi sighed. The Mengs were powerful. They wanted to take her back and punish her many times. At first, Gu Min was strong enough to protect her, but then Gu Min passed away. My position as a father became a bit awkward. One was a divorcee and the other was a widower who had lost his wife. The latter always protected the former. As time went by, there were all kinds of ugly words. Later, due to various considerations, Lu Shi finally agreed to remarry. His wife was Gu Zhen. Even so, she has been living in fear all these years. She is sensitive and thinks too much. How can she recover? Because of her eldest son Meng Heng, Jiang Pingji said with certainty. Lu Shi nodded. She lost her second son, but her eldest son is still in the Mengs. I thought that even though Meng Zhan is despicable, even a vicious tiger would not eat its own cubs. I didn't expect that your aunt would take it to heart and her health became worse. The second lady's life in the Lus was not good, so her eldest son could be less tortured in the Mengs. So, that's why my mother pretended not to know the truth when she saw Meng Heng. Yes. It was indeed frustrating. Wuxia sneered. She was born in the wild. The Mengs of Xianxia are just a joke. At the same time, the audience in the streaming room exploded. Sleeping sanguis Xianxian, watching the whole story. Women in ancient times had a hard life. The second lady was born in a good family, but her husband's family was so powerful. They wanted to torture her, but she couldn't even fight back. Yanlingshi, how is this just being powerful? He was simply a local tyrant. He could come and go as he pleased. So what if one wife died? There were still millions of other wives waiting to marry into his family. Jiaoting, it seems like the girls in our era are happier. At least they can get a divorce. Not like here where a divorce is fatal. You might even be dragged back into the pond. It's scary. Huashudiji, maybe it's just an extreme case? I watched the streaming. The host was riding in a carriage and there were young women on the road. It shows that the social mores are not that restrictive to women. There are all kinds of birds in a big forest. The Mengs seem to have a high social status. It's not an exaggeration to call them local tyrants. They have power and the right to do whatever they want. Sans Xianxia snacking. Social productivity determines social status. Even if the social mores are open now, they will be closed sooner or later. It's an unchangeable historical trend. Women's status will only get lower with men's demands. Jiang Pingji was lost in thought as she read the bullet screen. Chapter 128. The internet provides you with wonderful novels to read. If she had died in battle, she would have had peace. But who would have thought that she would have a second life? Jiang Pingji had no sense of belonging to this world. Her life was forced upon her by the system without her consent. But since she was alive, she would not seek death. The federal soldiers could die however they wanted, but they could not commit suicide or lose their will to live. That was the behavior of a coward. So she chose to live well. She treated it as a retreat from the battlefield and a leisurely vacation. Which one of the vacations did not pursue a happy mood? If they did not like it, they would either completely destroy it or change it into something they liked. Why force themselves to get used to it? The world should change for me, not the other way around. Don't you think so, system? Jiang Pingji asked with a smile. The system was silent for a while, then complained, "Isn't it enough for you to go to heaven? Do you want to pierce the sky? If you have the ability to show off, come down here if you have the ability. The sky is not paper. How can it be pierced?" Jiang Pingji pretended not to know and refuted the system. She liked to see the system stomp its feet and complain. It was so cute that it could not do anything about her behavior. The system endured the pain and said, "That's enough. If I talk to you again, I will have a heart attack and go back to the furnace to be reborn." Jiang Pingji had a faint smile on her lips. She looked at the waterside pavilion in the courtyard. No one knew what she was thinking. Night fell. The hustle and bustle of the day subsided. The quiet night shrouded the land. The second lady rested in peace for a few days. She looked a little better. However, she had been sick for many years. Even with the continuous supply of good medicine, she did not know when she would be able to recover the vitality she had lost. She gritted her teeth and saw her son in name. The second lady's mood fluctuated greatly. Her eyes were full of malice. Her mood fluctuated too much. When she returned to her bedroom, she naturally became even more ill. The maid hurriedly called for a doctor. "You still don't like to drink medicine. Eat some candied plums." Lucy entered the room and saw her covering her mouth in disgust. He could not help but be speechless. He took the box of candied plums from the maid. The second madam took it and said in a low voice, "Brother-in-law knows me best. He knows that I don't like to drink those bitter medicines. It doesn't matter how much you know. You still have to drink. Otherwise, how can you take care of your body?" Lucy smiled. "Don't eat too much. You'll get sore teeth." Brother-in-law has always been someone who doesn't come to the temple for no reason. Since you suddenly came to my place today, you must have something to tell me. The second lady didn't listen to his advice. Instead, she stuffed the candied plums into her mouth one after another. Only then did she suppress the bitter taste in her mouth. "Just say it." Lucy couldn't help but sigh. Although they were husband and wife in name, they did not have a physical relationship. Rather than husband and wife, they were more like brother and sister. Every time he saw the second madam, he would suddenly think that she was still the naive and clingy girl who liked to pester Amin. However, it was different now. Lu Shi, who had always been calm and steady, couldn't help but feel his hands itch when he thought of the culprit who had caused her to become like this. The Meng family is in trouble. Meng Zhan's county governor's office was burned and Meng County is filled with rioters. The Meng family's army is afraid that the news will be leaked. Instead of appeasing the people, they tried to suppress them with blood. This is making the people even more angry. If you want to step on them, this is the perfect opportunity. The second madam was stunned when she heard the news. Then she burst into laughter. Tears of laughter rolled down her cheeks. I was wondering. I thought the family couldn't bear to see me living a good life and purposely came to humiliate me. I didn't expect it to be like this. The second madam laughed so hard that tears were rolling down her cheeks. Lu Shi's heart ached when he saw her. All sorts of feelings welled up in his heart. He didn't feel good at all. Brother-in-law, didn't you say that you'd rather tear down a temple than ruin a marriage? Lu Shi shook his head. You hold a grudge. When did you say that? Before Min left, the person she let down the most was you. I also owed you a lot. You are my wife's sister and my wife in name. If I don't protect you, am I supposed to protect Meng Zhan? He married her, but he couldn't fulfill his obligations. He made her live like a widow. That was his fault. Lu Shi would always remember his mistakes. The second madam lowered her head with a smile. Brother-in-law, you make me feel ashamed. If you hadn't taken me in, I wouldn't have become the madam of the Lu family. If we're talking about owing something, it's naturally me who owes you and brother-in-law. After all, this position belongs to my sister. Even if Lu Shi hadn't taken her in, no one would have dared to say anything. Lu Shi didn't owe her anything. Marrying her had caused Lu Shi a lot of trouble for no reason. His wife had died and he had married his wife's sister. She had been divorced and her reputation had been ruined. People who didn't know the truth wouldn't think too much. The Meng family had slandered her and accused her of having an affair with Lu Shi. She didn't even dare to think about those days. Lu Shi smiled bitterly. Was he really not responsible? Meng Zhan was his classmate and good friend. He was also a descendant of a loyal family. His ancestor was famous. He was the Xia dynasty's god of war, Meng Jing. Compared to the other candidates, Lu Shi naturally favored his classmate more. He was confident that he understood Meng Zhan and felt that he would be a good man. However, the result was a slap in the face. If he hadn't been blind to pick on Min's brother-in-law, there wouldn't have been so much trouble. The second madam seemed to understand Lu Shi's thoughts. She sighed and said, if not for sister's pity, I would have been tortured to death by those servants long ago. Although I have a biological father, it is better than not having one. My deceased mother's status is low. Who in the Gu residence cares about me? Only sister is kind and benevolent. Gu Min was only a few years older than her, but she always felt like her sister had raised her. If not for sister saving me from the well back then, would there be the Gu Zhen of today? The first madam did not care about Gu Zhen's marriage. It was her married sister who helped her pick a good husband in private. She screened those talented and virtuous men carefully. They were all good husband candidates. However, Gu Zhen was blind and chose the worst one. If she had not been stubborn and rebellious back then and had married the man her sister had painstakingly picked, her life now would be so comfortable that those noble ladies would die of envy. However, her life now was pretty good. The second madam looked down and curled her lips up slightly. She would be content with what she had. She would take good care of her sister's only child in this world. She would enjoy the blessings that her sister could not. Now she could recuperate in peace. The real good days were yet to come. As for Meng Zhan, it was as her sister said. Take revenge if you have a grudge, and take revenge if you have a grudge. Humans only live for a few decades. If you can be stubborn, why let yourself be sullen? Every dog has its day. There will be a day when Meng Zhan will kneel at my feet like a stray dog, as lowly as an ant. Chapter 129. The humiliation she had suffered in the backyard of the Meng family, the nightmares she had endured, and the pain of losing her son would all be repaid by the culprit 1,000 times over. Not only that, but he also had to avenge his sister. She knew her sister very well, and her brother-in-law treated her very well, unlike her who was tortured in the Meng residence. How could she have a shorter life than her? Lu Shi sighed softly. He had no temper with his deceased wife's stepsister. You don't have to mess with Meng Zhan because of me. It's not that I don't work hard, but I don't want you to dirty your hands for someone like that. The second lady's eyes flashed with anger. What does he have to make you worry about him? But if we miss this opportunity, I'm afraid that given the resources of the Meng clan, it will be difficult to shake them. The second lady snorted coldly and glanced at Lu Shi. Brother-in-law has always been ruthless. Why are you pretending to be ignorant now? Lu Shi was speechless. Could he say, black-hearted and vicious, was not a good word? They really were sisters. Praising someone was like scolding someone. Opportunities don't come often, but it's not like there won't be a next time. When killing an enemy, the most taboo was not to kill with one strike. If my brother-in-law trampled on the Mengs this time, it wouldn't hurt at all. Instead, it would incite their hatred and bring trouble to our doorstep. Brother-in-law has been operating in Hu County for many years, and it is not easy to get such a good position. If we lose it because of this, it will not be worth it. If I'm going to fight, I naturally have to kill him in one strike. The second madam smiled coldly. She had endured those years of living a life worse than death. She could afford to wait a few more years. Lu Shi stared at her for a long time and heaved a sigh of relief. It's great that you can think that way. The second madam glanced at him and said angrily, does brother-in-law think that when is an ignorant girl? I'm just worried that you'll take things too hard, Lu Shi muttered. Although she had married the man in front of her and given her a place of protection, she was stubborn and opinionated. She knew that the Meng family would not let it go so easily. In order to prevent the Meng family from implicating her further, she refused to cooperate with them. She did not take the medical officer's advice to heart. She was delaying her illness, torturing herself, and refusing to receive proper treatment. How could Lu Shi's heart bear it? Now that Gu Zhen was willing to let go, he felt as if a heavy burden had been lifted from his heart. If she continued to be stubborn as her brother-in-law, there was nothing he could do. It's good that you've thought it through. Recuperate well. As long as you get better soon, I'll provide you with delicacies every day. Of course. When have I ever been polite to brother-in-law? The second madam snorted and asked, let's not talk about this first. Have you thought about how to deal with Meng Liang? How dare he openly claim the title of my son? Is he worthy of that with his background? Lu Shi thought about it carefully. Jiang Pingji's words appeared in his mind and he revealed a little. Every wrong has its perpetrator and every debt has its debtor. Why are you dragging an innocent child into this? Lu Shi's first sentence made the second madam's face darken, but the second half of his sentence lightened up. Moreover, your brother-in-law is the chief of a county. I can't do anything to a child. The second madam was smart, or else Meng Zhan would not have fallen in love with her at first sight. The Mengs were a prestigious family in Dongqing, and Meng Zhan's wife was at least the daughter of an aristocratic family. Even though the second madam was later recognized as the daughter of the first wife, her status was still much lower. Lu Shi's words were vague, but as smart as she was, she immediately understood what he was hinting at. With Lu Shi's current status, it was indeed embarrassing for him to make a move on a junior, but it shouldn't be a problem for his children, right? However, the Mengs were still deeply rooted in Dongqing, and they could not be easily shaken. If he wanted to do anything to Meng Liang, he could not drag the Lus into it, lest the furious Mengs pursue the matter. It was not worth alerting the enemy now. In a few words, Meng Liang's situation had become extremely dangerous, but Lu Shi did not have the slightest premonition of impending danger. Just like what Mother said, the Lus are a pile of mud that can't be helped. Look, I can see the fire in Lu Zhongqing's eyes, but he has to suppress his anger. He doesn't dare to touch me. He is such a coward, but father still thinks he is powerful and fears him everywhere. The girl, who was originally beautiful and charming, was lying on the comfortable bed. She tilted her head and saw the neatly arranged clothes on the side. She casually picked them up with her fingers and snorted in disgust, as if she was holding something dirty in her hand. This is so shabby. This kind of lousy material is only worn by the servants in the manor. Lu Zhongqing actually sent it here to humiliate me. She followed Meng Liang into the manor, and the manservant who was pretending to be a maid hurried forward to stop Meng Liang from throwing the clothes out. She kept muttering, My Langjun, you are wandering outside, so of course you are not as good as in the manor. Although this kind of material is shabby, it only became popular 3 years ago in Shangjing. Hejin is a poor and remote place. I heard that some gentry families can't even keep their basic decency. It's already good enough to have clothes to cover their bodies. Langjun, just bear with it for a while. When the matter blows over, Master and Madam will come to take you back. Meng Liang secretly gritted his teeth in anger, but he had to admit that what the manservant said made sense. It was not the time to be picky. If it weren't for Meng Hun, I wouldn't have to suffer like this. Hearing what the manservant said, Meng Liang suddenly became angry. He is just a lowly servant of the Mengs. How dare he throw a tantrum and make father so angry? The manservant echoed. That's right. Meng Hun is just like his name. He is a stupid person. Langjun, you don't have to be angry with him. When the Meng's army kills all the rebels, Meng Hun will fall into your hands. Meng Hun was the powerful man who burned down the county governor's mansion. He used to be a servant of the Mengs and had climbed to the position of the county governor with great effort. If it were in the early days of the Xia dynasty, Meng Hun wouldn't dare to say anything even if all the women in his family came to serve him, let alone his wife. But now he really thinks that the Mengs are so weak that he even dares to bully a little servant. I'm so angry. The manservant's words did make Meng Liang's anger dissipate, but he still felt an unspeakable humiliation. Yesterday he and the manservant had sneaked out and accidentally saw Meng Hun sneaking into Hejian County. They were almost scared out of their wits. If he had known that Meng Hun would be so persistent, he wouldn't have been so willful. He wouldn't have ditched his guards and followed his friends here. Damn it. Thinking of the little girl he should have gotten earlier, and then thinking of the current situation, he couldn't help but feel pain in his chest. But the manservant also reminded him that they should hide in Lu Shi's mansion for the time being. They would contact the guards and servants when they settled down. When there was someone protecting him, Meng Liang was naturally not afraid of Meng Hun. Meng Hun could be killed by a random knife. You're tuning in to the Zhou Xian's Legacy YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.